Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to officially call this Manvel City Council workshop to order at 5 p.m. We have all council members present and one special guest joining us up here for the workshop. So we have one item that's on the workshop, which is discussion on the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. I'll introduce this item, and then Dan will turn it over to you and to Rosie. So every year I give the budget a theme, and last year's theme was back to the basics, where we invested about $2 million into hiring some new positions and one-time supplementals and equipment. And this year, as I was reviewing the budget over the weekend and thinking about it, the theme that I put towards it was building trust. I know the department heads have been reading a book called The Speed of Trust, and there's an equation in it that I love. I've actually been using it a lot recently, that when trust is a significant factor in your relationship, your cost to produce a product goes down and your speed goes up. But when there's lacking trust, cost goes up and your speed goes down. And there's a story that's shared in the book about Warren Buffett and his company. They end up buying Walmart. And most acquisitions take anywhere from 9 months to a year to do, but this acquisition with Walmart took a month. They had a 2-hour meeting, had a handshake agreement, and then in a month it was closed. And when Warren Buffett was asked about it, he said, because we trusted what Walmart told us, and they were able to back it up, we were able to close it so quickly. And so when I think about the budget, I think about us building trust with our city employees, but really importantly with the community as well, because we have a lot of big decisions to make over the next few years, and we need trust to be a key part of that. So one of the other things that I'll say in introducing this, and it's as I reviewed the budget and spent time thinking about it and praying about it, I think we're at a really, really good spot with the budget and with the tax rate. It's not everything that we would want to do. There might still be some small changes in it, but in full transparency, I've not voted for a budget since 2019 in favor of a budget or a tax rate. The city of Manvel has not received unanimous approval on a budget and a tax rate since 2019. And as a compliment and a kudos to Dan, to you and Rosie and the team, this is a budget and a tax rate that I would vote for and I would support. I'm not easily convinced to approve budgets and tax rates, but this is something that I could get behind. So thank you for your work and everything that you guys have done and you guys have put into this. So Manager Dan, we'll turn it over to you. Then we'll go down the line, starting with Councilman Bonner, kind of see if there's any questions, feedbacks, opinions. And I know, Dan, that there's kind of one key thing that you need to know tonight as well. So the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the budget document itself that you received last week, that is to fulfill a charter requirement that says the city manager has to give you a proposed budget by August 1st. And like we talked about last week, it's kind of an odd date to pick, because we are not necessarily guaranteed that we will have the no new revenue rates and voter approval rates in time for that August 1st date. So amazingly, we did get them last week, just in time. I think it was at that morning, Rosie, or the afternoon before. So we were able to incorporate that into this document. There's 107 pages of it. It seems long, and of course, this won't be our ultimate document that we refer to, throughout the year. But this is a culmination of all of those important details that you've seen so far. So the second section, the first section is just a quick little summary from me, and it's very similar to last year's. But the second section, that's exactly what y'all saw last Monday night. So that's the last 2 years' budgets and where they wound up, and then this year's current budget and where it's at year to date, along with the proposed numbers for next year. So it's the exact same printout from last week. But right after that, section 3 is important, because that's what we received from BCAD. And the $2.1 billion is the important number there, because everything else is based on that. It's interesting to note, and I pointed this out to the mayor, going back to my narrative on page 2. I provided you a summary for the last 10 years. So going back to 2015, you see we were at $411 million total taxable value for the city, and it kept growing and growing. And then 2022, we hit $1 billion, and then 2 years later, we hit $2 billion. So really exponential growth there. But this year, strangely, it's only 2.1 billion. So we haven't seen quite the growth. There's obviously some reasons behind that. Some of it is folks protesting their numbers. Some of it's, I guess, the TERS. Some of it is the new homestead exemption. But anyway, the number is 2.1 billion is what they're projecting. Now that does, in the spirit of full disclosure, that does include $140 million of an estimate. So the numbers that are still being worked on, either protests that they're still working through. So that number's a little bit fluid, but at this point, I think we're safer to move forward with this number. It's no longer listed as an estimate from BCAD. Section 4 is also very, very important. That's the tax rate notice, and that's the one that we just got last week. And that's where they provide us with our no new revenue tax rate at the top there. Their no new revenue tax rate for us is 50 cents, actually almost 51 cents, so 0.507231. Compared to last year, that number was about 49 cents. So the no new, as we predicted, the no new revenue rate did go up a little bit, but more importantly, or more interestingly to me anyway, is that the voter approval tax rate went up significantly. So it's at 0.606924, so almost right at 61 cents. So the range is from 50 cents to 61 cents. So the reason that's important, y'all have asked a couple of times throughout the budget process, at what point do we need to say out loud if we want to, what if the council decided, what, we want all of those people that that the department heads told us about, we want all those things, we want the TMRS, we want everything, and if it's 70 cents, well then let's go for it, but we got to go to the voters. So anything over that voter approval rate, we have to go out to the voters. Does that make sense so far? So anyway, that's kind of our range, and the purpose the mayor alluded to tonight when we have an action item, the purpose for tonight is we have to set that maximum. So you're not setting the actual tax rate, if I got that right, Bobby. So it's the maximum. So pretend like you said 60 cents tonight. Well, then you can't go to the voter approval rate of 0.606924 because you set it at 60. If you set it at 58 tonight, you can't go any higher than that. If you set it at 56 tonight, you can't go any higher than that. You can always go lower, but you can't go any higher. Okay, so that's the importance of tonight. And all right, so enough on Section 4. So Section 5 is a property tax summary. That's an internal summary that Rosie put together for us. And what we wanted to show here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different scenarios. And the top one is what no new revenue tax rate would look like. On the left-hand side, you're seeing the numbers with the TERS built in. The numbers on the right-hand side is the numbers without considering the TERS. Is that correct, Rosie? Section 5. It's called the property tax summary.
What page?
Oh,
It's gonna be the far back of your binder there.
Page 74, Alyssa said, if you're looking at it on the electronic version.
That's section
Section
12.
5, I see section, under the preliminary?
Looks like this right here.
Right, here's section
12.
This is it right here, section 5.
Okay, so. Sorry, I didn't want to pretend like.
No, you're good.
I'm like,
Yeah, that's a workshop, so this is perfect timing. Are we all there now, Section 5?
Yep.
Okay. So the top area, I don't know if you have yours printed in blue or not.
Section 3, there it is. Went 9, 12, there we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. So in the upper right-hand corner, you see that 2.1 billion again. In the middle, if you see that 356,803, that's the TERS number. So the number on the far left-hand side, that's the number that we actually realized after you factor in the TERS, the 1.8. So the first, I guess, 3 rows, if you will, that's the no new revenue tax rate of 0.507231. Then the next 3 rows, that's the voter approval rate of 0.606. Then the next 3 rows that are kind of probably highlighted a little bit, that's your 56-cent tax rate that we've been using throughout the budget process only because that's what it was last year. So one good thing that came out of the numbers we received from BCAD last week is that the 56 cents is in that range, because that would have been bad, right, if the voter approval rate was 54 cents. and we've been assuming 56. So we're within range still. The budget documents are still based on 56. And then below that, we've included 57, 58, 59, and 60. So if you just wanted to see what those numbers would look like. So far, so good. Then the next section, section 6. This is just kind of a different way to present what we've talked about. These are the 5 positions that are included right now in the budget at 56 cents. Those 5 positions. And then section 7 is the 19 positions that are not included that you heard from the department heads of what they needed. As you can see, most of those are public works positions that are not currently funded at 56 cents. Section 8 are the supplemental requests that are included. So there's 17 of them out of 37. That's just right at $500,000. And then the next section, section 9, are the 20 supplemental requests that are not included. And what I did go ahead and we added here that TMRS updated service credit. That's one of the items that I told you about, but it wasn't included in the table. So now that's included as well. So about $1 million of supplemental requests that are not included. Speaking of TMRS, go to section 10. So this is a quick little summary of the cities in Brazoria County that do have the updated service credit available. And these right now are sorted based on population. So as you can see, Manvel is the city with the largest population that does not offer this particular benefit to our employees just yet. So your Pearlands, Lake Jackson's, Alvin, Angleton, Freeport, Clute, Sweeney, West Columbia, Richwood, Brazoria, Iowa Colony, and Oyster Creek all do offer that particular benefit. And then right after that is a little sheet directly from TMRS kind of explaining what the updated service credits are. Section 11 is let's see, I think this is our almost last section. So that's the actual worksheet. There's a lot that goes into this. There was one specifically that I wanted to mention to you. I guess it's on the very last sheet. Again, this is how they are. This is almost like your 1040 or something. This is how they arrive at those numbers. If you go to the very last sheet of section 11, they call their section 8 total tax rate. That's the no new revenue tax rate. That's the voter approval tax rate. And then it also has the de minimis rate, which we haven't talked about. Technically, we could go to the de minimis rate, which is 62 cents. That was not even an option last year because the de minimis rate was less than the voter approval tax rate. So what that does is it kind of builds in all of the tax rate that we've left on the table over the last, is it 3 years, Rosie? Is that right? Yeah, so they kind of keep track of it, and so you can roll that into it without any penalty, if you will. So technically, you could go up to 62 cents. I didn't want to muddy the waters, but because I figured there was sticker shock enough with 60 cents. And then the very last section, section 12, is the BCAD certified totals. The main reason we included that one, the first sheet, and again, you might not have it highlighted, but it's the exemption breakdown. So what they're estimating, if you look on that very first sheet, go down almost to the bottom, it says there's an HS, that's homestead exemption. And they're estimating $130 million of value based on the new 10% homestead exemption. So I just wanted you to see that. And also at the very top on the left, it shows the property count of 9,034. So that shows you where BCAT is getting their numbers from. Compared to last year was 8,607. So we've seen about 400 new units since last year. So that's kind of the breakdown of what we've provided for you. Again, this won't look like the original. The budget that gets approved next month will be your normal budget, what you're used to seeing. But this is really to help you see how it all comes together. Where does that 56 cents factor in? All of those different things that the department heads talked about over these last couple of months. How do all those projects actually shake out? If for some reason you wanted to, right now the budget is at 56 cents. If you went to 57 cents, as an example, the swing is about $200,000 more revenue for every penny that we go, I believe. Is that right, Rosie? So 57, 58, 59, 60. Yeah, so that would be 800,000. If you went all the way up to 60 cents, that would be about $800,000 more in revenue. So if, you wanted to get more of those staffing requests that we didn't include, or more of the supplementals that we didn't include, that would be, potentially one way to get that money, I guess, to get that revenue. For each penny, it's about $200,000 more in revenue. I'm going to take a breath and go down the line and see what kind of questions we have, Mayor.
Sounds good. And I think, Dan, what you're looking for is some direction tonight as to whether or not council would like to stay at 56 cents, go higher than 56, or go lower. We're not taking a vote on that yet, but you guys would like to see some of council's perspective there, so that way if you need to, for example, if you went below 56, let's say you went to 55, that's about a $200,000 cut from the budget that you'd have to
Exactly.
see. Or if we went up to 57 cents, it's
Right.
$200,000 that you guys would have to figure out where that goes. So tonight, having some direction there would be helpful, correct?
Yeah, and perfectly said, Mayor. And so y'all have had another week to think about it, and now, it's a little bit easier, I think, hopefully, to see those supplementals and those staffing requests, in one little sheet. So you can see, man, I really think we need to hire this person, but here's the impact. If staff, if you can't figure out anywhere else to squeeze it from, then maybe we need to consider a different tax rate. Or hey, the tax rate is what it is, it's going to be 56 and no more, but I still want you to squeeze it. That could be the direction as well.
Sounds good. I appreciate that. So Councilman Bonner, we'll start with you. Any inputs or advice, and if you can weigh in on the tax rate as well, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make sure I'm understanding the math on one thing. So at 56%, with the 10% homestead exemption, if we go up any on the tax rate, for every percent we go up, that's going to basically eat about 25% of that exemption.
Yes, sir.
Is my math right?
It is. It's interesting. So, and I mentioned this to a couple of y'all, that the 10% the 10% homestead exemption is about $800,000 in revenue. If you went from 56 cents up to 60 cents, it's about $800,000 revenue. The Crowder Gulf contract for debris cleanup is about $800,000. So I don't know why that is the magic number this year, but it is. So we're seeing two $800,000 impacts, if you will, between the homestead and the debris cleanup.
Yeah, and while the Crowder was something that that's one of the instances I kind of spoke about when we were talking about adopting the homestead exemption, is it doesn't take a very big to happen. Now, I'm not as worried about that one because we will reclaim 75% of it if we do everything we're supposed to do and the audit goes fine. But this is just something I want all the citizens to understand. It's going to be a tight year this year, maintaining a 56 cent tax rate and doing just the minimum, what I'll call the minimum in what we're doing, adding people, the few things that we're adding. So everybody's going to have to understand there could be something else that comes up, and we could have to dig into funds that we really don't want to dig into again. And so if you hear council sitting there saying, no, we really can't do this, it's not going to be mainly because we don't want to do it, it's just we don't think we can afford to do it. And because I don't want to raise taxes, I mean, we just cut them 10%, so I'm good with this budget where it stands right now. Would I like to see a few things like I talked about last week, that we can figure out where we can tweak this and that? Yes, but I don't want to do it at the expense of having to raise taxes. It doesn't make any sense for the council to pass a 10% homestead and then go up on the tax rate. That just doesn't make sense to me, not given the numbers that we have now. If the numbers have been different, maybe we look at it different. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Councilman Bonner. And Manager Dan, to speak to the councilman's point, do we have any numbers to present right now about maybe some We were being very conservative over here, and we have some extra that maybe we could pull. Do we have that yet, or do we think maybe we can get that within the next 2 weeks?
No, so Rosie's meeting with each one of the department heads, because, we've still got a little bit of fiscal year left to live, right? So we don't know exactly what's going to be left over, but, whatever, if there were any supplementals that can be done now, I think we talked a little bit about that before. If there's anything that can be squeezed, that's what Rosie's working on right now. So there's still a little bit of a moving target, and of course there's some conservativeness built in to the existing year that we're in right now, of course. So, Rosie, do you want to add anything to that? Nope.
Perfect. Yes, sir.
I think the bigger challenge is going to be this year is what do we do as a team, not just council, but staff, and to see where can we up revenue? What good decisions can we make in bringing future revenue to the city and trying to do things that control spending. Everybody can always say they're going to do it. Some people do it, some people don't. We're just going to have to decide if we want to do some of the things that people want, then we're going to have to tighten up everywhere. And we're going to have to be smart about future revenue, bringing it in, not giving away the bank. We can't do that anymore. Those days are gone. And some people are going to say, well, then you're not going to get that person to come to town. Okay. That's just the way. Other communities around have experienced the same thing, where to get growth started, they kind of gave away more than they really wanted to get that key person to the city. But we shouldn't have to do that anymore. If somebody wants to come and be a part of our growing city, then they ought to be willing to pay for some of the stuff that needs to be done to do it.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lands, go to you next.
Well, I appreciate all the numbers y'all put together. It's a very well done. It is disappointing that even if we go to the 60 cent, we're not getting everything that we want to get. I mean, but that's, and I would really struggle to go over the 56 cents. I mean, I know we're just talking today, I understand that. But we did just give, the homestead exemption, and it does feel a little silly to give that and then turn around and go up on the taxes. I mean, that's not the way things are supposed to operate. One of my main concerns has always been the top interest and priority to me from the very first day that I wanted to run for council is our public safety. And we just can't, we cannot get the officers that we need right now. Crime is beginning to be a bigger issue. And folks, we got to get a handle on that. I mean, that's, to me, that is the number one thing for Manvel, is to keep our crime rate down. We don't need to be a target, and I'm afraid that that's what we're turning into south of Houston. That's really all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Oplager.
So, I think, talking with you and Chief last week, crime's up, 20%, something like that, Chief? Somewhere around there?
Well, excuse me, it's not all crime, it's property crimes. According to our neighbors reporting, the property crimes, which is the example, thefts, building material thefts and such as that have been on the rise, and it's increased 29% this year.
Are burglaries up? Is that properties against crime?
Property crimes, or specifically to thefts of property.
Okay.
I don't know the exact numbers for the burglary. I don't have the reports with me. I don't have the reports with me right now.
Okay, yeah, no, okay.
But as far as what they cut, when they break down the NIBRS reporting, which is a national incident-based reporting system that we report to the FBI every month, is that our property crimes, which are classified as theft of properties, damage, vehicle damages such as that, is up 29%.
Right, okay, thank you. So at the 56 cents, we're only going to get one new patrolman. right? It's what it looks like. And with the technology that was deployed with what the FLIR cameras, is there a way to, I don't know how much more any of that would cost, or more technology, using technology a little bit more? Is that
Just to qualify, so for public safety, there one new patrol officer, but also one additional animal control officer.
right, yeah.
As
So
far
I'm
as public
talking,
safety goes.
but right now I'm talking crime fighting.
Well,
So,
according to our ordinance, they're both crimes.
yeah, that's true, okay. So, but I mean, like, we spent like 300,000 on the cameras, the FLIR cameras. They're all deployed, right? Are they all up?
Not all of them. We are
All-
still waiting on permitting from TxDOT. As soon as we get the permits from TxDOT, then they will go up on the state highways. But for most of the city roads and the county roadways, they are all up and active. I think we're waiting on permits for 2 of them on the county roads, 1 more on the county roads. But for the majority, I'd probably say, 90% are up and running.
Are we seeing a positive out of that to where
Well,
is that a force multiplier that we hope for?
yes and no. Actually, we can use an example as last night, we had an incident that we're able to identify a possible suspect vehicle with. But they're only good based off the data that we get. I mean, if we know when an offense occurred, we can track that vehicle down based off of the time frame. If it occurred 3 days ago and we don't have an accurate time, it's kind of hard to pinpoint 500 cars that went through this camera system.
So do you have enough people to help manage that data, the cameras and all that? Does an officer have to do that, or is that a?
Well, Captain Day is actually the
Captain
one
Day's
that
it?
oversees the flock safety system, but we also have our investigators. We have specific investigators who monitor those as well whenever we have a reported offense.
Well, okay, thank you. So the whereas, I don't know, 56 cents is great, but I'm just a little bit worried about, the numbers. I mean, numbers don't lie. They're there, right? So I guess in our back pocket, what are we going to do, 6 months from now? If crime keeps going up and people are pounding on the door and we don't have the patrolmen for the streets, are we going to have to rip into the fund balance again to try to make up the staffing? So I don't know. So I'm not, if it's going to provide another patrolman or two, I don't have a concern bumping it up a few cents. I don't know. My vote is always in the best interest of Manvel.
So the request total were two patrol officers, and we've got 1 in the proposed. So the biggest impact to the public safety department in this budget, things that weren't included, are on the supplementals. That was the majority of things that weren't included was on the for public safety. For public works, it was mainly personnel.
Right. So, but even if you went 57 cents, that'd be what? That would get you a policeman, wouldn't it?
Officer in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sure would.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. So I'll weigh in here, I think, because we have a phenomenal patrol captain who is getting the best out of his team, that they are catching more criminals, and thus that's why you're seeing your crime statistics go up. When you have more cameras and more patrol officers on the street, you are going to see your crime rates increase because they're catching more. If we do add a second patrol officer, we're going to have to hire a second court clerk, as Tammy mentioned. Those two are dependent on each other because as they produce more tickets, you're going to need more processing there. I would like to see the impacts before we maybe add a second patrol officer. And that could be a mid-year adjustment to what the flock cameras are going to have, because as the flock camera pings come in, that means you're dispatching out some more there. So I'd be interested in that. In regards to the tax rate, as I look at it, state law dictates that if you have a homesteaded property, it should not increase more than 10% in value. Now, we know the state likes to provide a lot of loopholes for the appraisal district, which is not run by the county, it's a separate entity. But by us providing a 10% homestead exemption and us holding the tax rate flat at 56 cents, which is a historical low, we touted it at our last State of the City address, we have done our part in ensuring that taxes do not go up. I think it's enticing to look at a higher tax rate. Right now, I think holding it at 56 cents is the right position. If we consider going above 56 cents, we will most likely see these council chambers filled with pitchforks and people calling for our heads. And I just don't know if that's something that we want to consider right now. We are going to have big asks of the community in the future as it relates to additional capital projects. And I think that would be an appropriate time to look at how those projects would impact the tax rate. So 56 cents is something that I could get behind, Dan, I know you and I have talked about that just for council's information. Just a few questions that I have here. I know the potential of forming both franchise agreements with Centerpoint will produce some additional revenue for us. I think we said roughly maybe an additional $50,000 that's not currently shown within the budget. Bobby, and this is putting you on the spot here, can money generated through the franchise agreement, does that just go into the general fund and can then be dispersed out as appropriate, or does it have set parameters of how it can be used?
I'm pretty sure it goes to the general fund unless Rosie knows anything different.
It's correct. It goes to the general fund and it gets expended just like any other general fund revenue.
So if those numbers are realized, Manager Dan, what would we potentially be looking at using some of that funding for?
Then we start going down the supplemental. I would think the supplemental items first, because those are one-time expenses, right, as opposed to staff. Because what we don't want to do, as far as I know, we've never had to lay people off. And I would really like to, we're all pretty conservative. All the directors are pretty conservative. So if we can't realistically and in good conscience, fund this person throughout the whole year, then we're going to pump the brakes, because that'd be the worst thing to get staffed up and then have to let somebody go. So to answer your question, I think we'd look at the supplemental items.
Okay, that works. I'd be very interested in looking at possibly some uniform help for police and public works with that funding. I know we talked about that. And if we're talking about ways to find additional funding in the budget at 56 cents, I know that's something that I would be interested in understanding the help that would provide to police and to public works there. Bobby had reached out to me, and he very generously offered up potentially looking at the legal assistant that's in the budget being a half-year position. So that way we could bring on another position as a half-year position, understanding that we'd have to fund both as full-year positions in the following year budget. Council, take time to think on that. We don't have to make that decision tonight. Bobby, I appreciate you offering that up. I do fully understand you need all the help that you can get. So I appreciate you putting that out there, and you're definitely a team player, so thank you for that. That's something to consider, Council, if maybe we'd want to look at possibly utilizing that for another position as half-year. So I wanted to put that out there. Rosie, what is in our fund balance for our vehicle replacement fund? What is that currently in the balance of our fund balance? Balance of our fund balances. Saying the same thing, but.
I looked at it, it was about $1 million.
$1 million, okay. So I know that in this current year's budget, you were looking at taking and purchasing 2 replacement patrol vehicles. Is that coming from that fund balance?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not coming out of the chief's current budget, that'd be coming from the fund balance?
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any additional vehicles that we would need to get from a vehicle replacement standpoint that could come out of that balance?
I would have to do a balance transfer from the fund balance, and yes, sometimes it happens where a vehicle gets crashed and it gets totaled, that would go into the replacement fund.
Let me rephrase my question. Are there any vehicles that we have right now that need to be replaced that are not identified as being replaced within this budget?
Not that I know of.
Okay, sounds good. For the utility fund, are we expecting to add a surplus, have a surplus at the end of this year for that budget? No, so it's going to be flat, zero balance. Okay. Based off of what's been proposed for that fund in the budget, is that taking into consideration any utility rate increase? Or,
Yes, sir.
okay, what percentage increase would we be looking at?
6.3%, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so we had 11% 2 years ago, we had 9% last year, and then we'd be looking for all utility ratepayers a 6% increase for this year, roughly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, let's make a note of that. Okay. 2 other questions that I had. In regards to the hot tax, it looks like we're going to be adding about $59,000 into that fund balance for the hot tax. Do we know what the current fund balance is right now for the hot tax?
No, but I can get you that
Okay.
balance.
Okay, that'd be great. we could get that, because I know that has very set parameters for what that can be used for, but that can be used for festivals, that can be used for history preservation projects. So I'd be interested to see how much we have in there and potentially what we could utilize some of that for. And then the last question that I had, Dan, and this would be one more for you. These revenue numbers are projections. So there is certainly a risk that the revenue numbers come in lower than what we're projecting. How high is that risk right now? Do you have high confidence level we're going to realize these numbers, or is it 50-50, or where are you sitting?
Well, I'll turn that one back over to Rosie, because I know Rosie's very conservative on the revenues, because they are unknown. So I mean, we use obviously historical trends, but then she's also talking to planning and permitting, like what are we actually seeing coming in? So you want to talk about that a little bit, Rosie?
Sure. I feel very confident on those revenues, but of course, like I said, anything can happen. And that's when we use those little surpluses on other lines to kind of make up for those discrepancies if something does happen. For example, the gas franchise that you were talking about. And we see that the property tax doesn't come in where it should be, we cover that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Rosie. And Councilman Bonner, just to speak to one of the items that you brought up about finding ways to generate revenue, I want to take that kind of that lead way to say the farmers market that happened this past Saturday was phenomenal. Manvel Market did an incredible job putting that on. I know that I saw Councilman Hudson there. I know Councilman Lands and Councilman Bonner, you guys were there. Councilman Lands, I think you were there pretty much all day, even helping them set up. And I think if we can find ways to promote community, promote supporting local businesses, that it makes people want to come here, that makes them want to move here. They feel a part of something. They want to spend their money here. And I hope that we'll be able to see, and I know we will be able to see more ideas like that in the future. So thank you for everybody that made that Saturday possible. That's all that I have. No other specific comments or questions. So I'll think on this some more, and if I have anything, Dan, I'll bring it up to you. Councilman Perry, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to everyone for putting this budget together. But I'll be honest, I've had heartburn since we received it, especially when I look at the staffing and the supplementals that we can't meet. And I'll be honest with you, it was tempting when we got the email with the no new revenue rate and the voter approved rate, because, my brain started turning. I was like, go up a cent or two. Maybe we can get those other public works and public safety officers. But then the news of for every penny we go up, all the work we did for the homestead exemption, we're starting to lose it. And that's a concern, because then it'll speak to trust, because then it begins to look like a sleight of hand. We give it to you here, but we're actually taking it away on the other side. So with that being said, strangely enough, this goes against everything I am, but strangely enough, it would be difficult for me to go up those cents, knowing that it would just take away what we've just given. What I do have a question on, maybe it's more rhetorical, but is it being overly optimistic because to me the incentives, while they may have been necessary, these incentive deals, these partnerships, they're killing us, and obviously they're going to be killing us for a while when we look at the number of years that some of them are contracted for. So is it overly optimistic to believe that we can come together as a council, as staff, as a city, and honestly look at our economic development and the way that we can not just attract new businesses, new startups, but I mean actually have a solid operational plan, with the full SWOT analysis, the SMART goals, all those terms that we use, in order to help would-be or prospective small business owners understand, what is possible as far as sales and products that people will purchase in our area based upon our location, based upon the demographics that are around us, and help them to develop solid business plans that are actually going to work, help them find ways to access capital that's going to sustain their business so that we can draw in more revenue, that, you know, we don't have to face these type budgets in the coming years and worry about, you know, having to raise the tax rate too high. That was a long rhetorical question, but
it's a great question.
Is it overly optimistic? Because you know, our location, we're on the 288 corridor, Highway 6, we're in the center of Brazoria County, we're in a state that has one of the best economies in the United States, really in the world. I just don't understand why we can't generate that interest. And I know some of the things you did with the task force, but generate that interest so that we can get that other source of revenue through economic development, small business, startups, and sustainability, so that we don't have to keep dealing with this.
Yes, sir. If I can, Mayor, MEDC is doing some really amazing things right now. That for many, many years, it was more of a reactive approach, if you will. Folks would come to MEDC and, hey, can you help us out with this? Well, they've got a consultant that they're working with right now that they're coming in and talking about, okay, seems like we might need an economic development coordinator. Is that a firm? Is that a part-time position? Is that a full-time position? Is that an executive position? So they're doing some one-on-ones with the folks in MEDC right now. That's really exciting. And what we probably do is bring MEDC and let them give you a little report on what they're working on, because it's for the first time. I mean, Bobby, you've been involved a lot longer than I have, and Tammy, this is the first proactive approach that I can recall. Sam?
No, I mean, I think it came out of, we got a person from the state economic development to come down and give a small little workshop, and with new members on the MEDC, I think that really showed some new energy, and they did talk about being more proactive and going out and having some sort of plan to bring in, not just wait for someone to come in the door and ask for something, but still have money for the mom and pop small projects, but to do something bigger. And they already did tie up most of their money helping us with the big project. So that was a big splash that they've already made.
And we've even talked, just after Hurricane Beryl, Bobby and the mayor and I have talked about maybe there's an incentivization type effort to, if for those that live in town, there was, everyone was running. If you were running, it was because of a generator there for a while, right? So is there something that we could do to a gas station or a barbecue place or any essential business to, hey, if we can figure out a way to help you out where your generator can be up and running, you don't waste everything that's in the freezer, but heck, you can also be the only thing that's open, to help economic development, help just as a good neighbor, as a cooling station, for heaven's sake. So anyway, to answer your question, you said it was rhetorical, but it's really not. It's a great point, and I'm proud to say that we're actually working on that.
Yeah, and it's great. I got the survey from the consultant. They probably feel I was very opinionated. But, okay, it's just concerning. I'd really like to see us be able to move forward in a stronger position without having to worry about, raising the taxes and getting the pitchforks and the what have you coming into the council chambers. And so I'll leave that alone, and I'll just close it with this. I do hope that we are working, and will continue to work to make it very clear to the citizens where we are. And so kind of to what Councilman Bonner spoke to, so that, when we get certain demands, it's understood that we can only provide what we can afford to pay for, and we can only afford to pay for it with the revenue that's available, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Pro Tem?
Okie dokie. So I agree with mayor on this being a rate that we can get behind. And I feel horrible inside. I don't like to lose sleep. You guys know that, I like to vote with my heart and have peace at night. The reality is that operating a city is like operating a business, and you have lives and souls that are at stake. Your employees, their well-being, the necessities, but also balancing the ever so, crucial transparency that we are so good at is knowing that, today we just had a stock market crash, right? So what's going to happen? And we have to plan for that. And so in hindsight, I think that last year when we voted the 56-cent tax rate, we were able to gain a little bit of traction, hopefully, with the statements like, hey, we're trying to catch up. We've always been trying to catch up. We don't like to raise taxes on citizens, but we also are very, very stringent when it comes to businesses coming in because we want it to grow the right way. What's interesting to me is I'm looking at, I guess you would say, the historical data, and I've been just staring at it thinking, how fascinating is it that in 2018 we had a 57-cent rate, and we generated almost 700,000, and we were able to operate the city on that money. I'm sorry, is it 700,000? Yeah. So, or is that million? It's
Yeah, that's the taxable value.
That's the taxable value,
The levy would have
right?
been 57 cents times.
Yeah, so I'm looking at I lost my place here. Okay, wait. Okay, net taxable value. So 58, and it was 411, and then 58, it stayed the same. Okay, let me go back to 2018. 57, and then it went up to 69 in 2019, and it only went up to 730. But then it went down to 64 cents, and yet the value still went up. And then we went down here, the city voted to bring it down 3 cents, and the values still went up. And then you look at 2022, and the values went down from 61 cents to 57 cents, and it still went up. And then 57 cents again in 2023, and it still went up. 2024, we went down yet again to 56 cents, and we still had a huge, huge net taxable value. And this is the first time that we're not dropping it, where we're keeping it, if we kept it the same, right? If we kept it the same, we would still have a higher taxable net value, but we would be operating on a more stringent budget. And that, to me, is what's concerning, is that trend right there. That, to me, tells me that there's a shift where there's a lot of growth, but the money available from that growth isn't what we would have thought it would when we dreamt about this 5 years ago. That's freaking concerning to me, excuse the word. And so that's what's scary to me, and that's why when I look at this from a city and a budgeting standpoint of operating a business, I understand that that's scary, that's terrifying. However, as our citizens, things are getting more expensive, and I will not apologize for backing the homestead exemption because, again, we are doing our part. While the world is crashing and burning, we're going to do our part. Sorry, right? What little can we do? And if that means that, our employees rally around us and they pick, they bootstrap with us and they roll their sleeves up and they work hard and they come and they fight for us because they know that we fought for them last year and we will fight for them again when we can, then that's kind of my hope. I would hope that that our employees and our staff and our citizens trust, on the theme of trust, this council, that we want to do what's right. We don't want to do backroom deals, right? We don't want to, all the narratives out there, that we want to look at this and be a responsible city. And so with that being said, I think it's difficult. We want to say yes. We want to say we love our city. We need all these things. We need all these employees. But like I said last week, this is going to be a penny pinching year. And so my request to our leaders here, our staff, our directors, is we hear you. We know we're trying to catch up. We're still the city on the rise. We're trying to have responsible growth. But if you guys will bear with us and just fight with us for this next year, then hopefully in a year from now, we can start realizing more of that more of that revenue, and maybe then we can make some more progress on the necessities and the tangibles that we're requesting. So with that being said, I'm happy keeping it at the 56-cent rate, and then to backdoor what Councilman Perry said is, I'm going to touch on the businesses. Yeah, I have my meeting with Chad tomorrow to discuss, Chad with the MEDC, the consultant, Chad Chancellor. I couldn't pass up on that offer to sit with him. And so I'm very optimistic about what plans and ideas and action steps that we can take as a city to entice the right businesses to come that will generate the right type of revenue for us that isn't just fast, quick, and impulsive. I want us to do things right, and I want it to be long-lasting, and I want our citizens to trust us that when they choose to move here, that we're a council that will fight for them, but we will also do what's right for our staff and our cities, and our businesses. So with that said, if anybody has ideas, please email me, text me, call me. Just don't Facebook me, because I probably won't respond there. So with that said, I just wanted to thank everybody who put all their hard hours of effort. Rosie, Robbie, Ray, Chad, a chief, who am I missing? IT, everybody. So thank you guys for that. But that's kind of where I'm at, and I hope that we can move forward with this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Hudson?
Yes, I've been writing down some notes, and every time I write something down, one of the councilmen would add to it. Tax rate down to 56 cents, 10% homestead deduction. But I've been on the council about 8 years, going on 9, and it's always been talk about what we need to do. Going back, if we should have done it back then, we would be up to snuff by now. We need to be proactive and look at ways to generate revenue here for the city. This is a booming city. It won't get any slower. It's going to pass us up. We have to look at new ideas. The MEDC, I'm happy that they're, on top of everything. We want to keep our small town values. I have no problem with that, but we have to understand that the big city is coming this way. We're on a Highway 6, 288. It's coming. You see the construction on 288. And I think that everybody is looking at us as we're slow. This will not be a so-called perfect situation. It won't be a perfect thing about how it's going to be. We're all never going to look at it and agree, but we're going to have to look at this situation and get to work. Before, I really love the small town atmosphere and everything, but we're going to have to make some long-term goals. And struggling over a low budget like we're doing, it ain't gonna get it. MEDC, grateful that they're putting something in to do what we have to do, but we're gonna have to look at it bigger than what we're doing. Just 288 and going into our county, we are one of the growth points in this area. And we're going to have to look at ourselves better than that. Nothing wrong with 10%, but we can't be going through each tax season and squeezing a few dollars here and a few dollars there. We're going to have to start looking at something bigger than what we've been dealing with. And if we don't, we'll never catch up growth. And that's my thing. Long-term goals. What do we want the city to look like? And what do we do to make that happen? It takes money to get money. I'm not talking about being a person that makes a lot of promises and we stick our foot out there and get wet, but we have to take some chances. Our citizens, evidently, they enjoy the 10% homestead deduction. The rate is decent, but there's no plan for growth. We're going to have to spend some money. We're going to have to make decisions that everybody's not going to like. This is not a so-called perfect utopia. It'll never happen. I know in the back of our minds we want everything to be hunky-dory. It ain't happening. So I think us as council members, we need to start focusing in on not day-to-day stuff, not year-to-year stuff. We've got to look down the road 10 years. We might not be here on the council, but we have to look at what we want our city to be. So, I mean, I'm with everybody in here on the council. I hear you. Some just coming in first year, want things to be done correctly, trying to appease some of the citizens, but a lot of times it ain't gonna happen. We have to look at what's best for the city long term. Because, like I said, I sit here and do my thing, understand what the problems are, but we have to come up with some solutions right away. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. Dan, as everybody was talking, there's two things, and I know we're out of time for the workshop tonight. We still will have time to work on the budget, maybe make some additional tweaks to it or things like that. We're not asking to vote on the budget tonight. That will probably come, the first meeting in September or the second meeting in September that we would actually take that vote?
It could be the first meeting. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but it certainly could be.
Okay. We maybe will have a good status at our next meeting here in August. Okay. Because there were just some things that I was looking at. I would love to, I know we're increasing our sidewalk repair budget by $25,000. I love to see that. I'd be interested to know kind of what sidewalks we've identified to get fixed with that, or maybe how much footage that will help us get. As I was looking at some others, when you look at, your 2022 to 2023 budget compared to this year's budget, compared to what's projected, for example, here's a line item for rental equipment. It looks like it was budgeted for $45,000. We've only used $8,600, but it's budgeted for $45,000 again. In the 2022-2023, we did use $34,000. But that might be some additional money that's opening up in the budget that could be utilized for uniforms, or if you find enough of those, maybe that's another patrol officer, or maybe that's another utility technician or groundskeepers or something like that. So I'm going to spend some time reviewing it and would love to I look forward to hearing staff's thoughts on that as well. Manager Dan, anything from you or any of your department heads as we wrap up this workshop?
The only other thing I was thinking about was I know we've all talked about the homestead exemption. So I guess the only difference is that the homestead exemption benefits people that have homesteaded, of course, right? So that's the citizens, the homeowners. So whereas the property tax is not only the homeowners, but it's also the businesses. So in the example we were talking about with $800,000, it's just distributing it differently, I guess, if you were to think about it that way. We're still, I was just looking at Pearland's, Pearland's at 65 cents, Alvin's at almost 69 cents. So no matter what, we're way below those cities, but those cities are growing as well. And so maybe, just maybe, that's how they pay for their growth. So just leave you with that.
Duly noted.
Yeah, duly. I'll also add, we have a lot of Pearland residents that are moving to Manvel because they like Manvel way more than Pearland. Just saying. No, I'm joking. It's hey, they last year. Well, I'll just say, so This year, Manvel football is in the same district as Shadow Creek
Yep.
High School, as Pearland Dawson, and Pearland High School. So last year, Mayor Cole and I had a bet that if Shadow Creek beat Manvel, I'd have to wear the Shadow Creek's gear to a Manvel City Council meeting, and they beat us last year. So I love the camaraderie and the collaboration we have between our cities, but also the very friendly competition as well. And this year, we get to play Alvin. I'll just say we're going to beat Alvin. Sorry, Pastor. I know you live in Alvin back there, but I'm banking on a win there. So we'll see. We'll see. All right, Council. Any other comments in regards to this workshop?
I do just want to.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Manager Dan, can you remind me where I can find in the budget the line item for the road repairs and the drainage that we here as a city in the budget are putting on there to repair?
Do you mean as part of the 10 million, that part of it?
That,
The CO? It's not in the general fund, it's in a separate fund.
okay.
But I can certainly show you.
All right, and so are we banking on that 10 million to do the road repairs and the sidewalks? And that's not, so what we have in this budget is the repairing of the existing sidewalks and the existing
Correct.
roads, correct?
Yes, the 10 million we're really trying to use for the newer roads, the conversion of the gravel roads to asphalt, and then some of those asphalt roads that have just, not been done in a long time. Obviously, we're still going to try and use those partnerships where we can. But the idea for the sidewalks was the ones that have no sidewalk at all, the ones that we kind of keep talking about between McCoy and Masters, for instance.
So that's part of that 10 million, but do we have that anywhere in like an actual plan when we can tell our citizens?
Not yet.
Hey, expect it, or it's like, it's kind of out there in like the universal imagination of our budget area?
It is. We want to get back on that. So the first phase was the ones that we presented to council. Actually, the first two phases, we presented those to council. So we're moving forward with those, and I know we owe you that, the next phase, no question about it. With the people that we have, there's only so much we can do. So right now, they're good. They're all caught up. They're not looking for work. But yes, ma'am. As soon as we're done with the budget, and the mayor's asked a couple of good questions too. As soon as we're past the budget and we've got some bandwidth again.
So we
Yes,
can,
ma'am. Yes, we will get
we
back.
can bank on like middle of September to touch this conversation and
I would say for sure by the end of the year, no question by the end of the year, because then we'll be on the other end of some of the road projects that we're doing. So we'll be ready, to start working on some sidewalks.
When would
which
you
is-
feel comfortable us having that conversation?
Yeah, after October, for sure. After we adopt the new budget, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Certainly.
Just want to make sure we don't forget our lovely citizens and their roads and their sidewalks.
Yeah, don't forget the sidewalk.
Abby said, please don't forget the sidewalks. She was on the news talking about the Manvel sidewalks.
All right, Council, let's
Thank you.
let's just take a 2-3 minute recess here. We'll wrap up the workshop at 6:04. Let's aim for 6:08 to head into the regular session. Thank you, everyone. All right. We will now reconvene back into executive session here at 6:12.
Executive session?
Not executive session, regular session. My mind's already towards the end of the agenda, so. Brooke, we're all good from an audio standpoint? Awesome. Okay, first up, we have the invocation, and we have Pastor Chad Bertrand with South Park Baptist Church joining us tonight. So, Pastor Chad, thank you for being here. Just if you could introduce yourself, say a few words, and lead us in a prayer.
Yeah, I'm Chad Bertrand. I'm from South Park Baptist Church in Alvin. I'm also the chairman of a group called Together for Alvin, where we try to get our churches together for the good of the city of Alvin. And we love the area around us too. And you were right about football. Don't tell them in Alvin, but I'm pretty sure you're going to beat us this year. But we can. So let me pray for y'all. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this city. We thank you for Manvel and the people who live here, and the leaders represented in this room. I pray that you'll give them wisdom and guidance, particularly tonight. Help them to know what is best for the city, and I pray that they'll be able to enact that this evening. I pray that you will bless the residents of this place, that they will know your love and your grace and your peace today. Be with them as they prepare to start back for school. Be with the teachers and the students and the parents and all the support staff that it takes to have school start back. And I pray that you will just be with this year to come. And I pray that good things will happen in the school system as well. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And then, Pastor Chad, can you just speak very briefly on the event that happened yesterday afternoon that you were involved in coordinating? I thought it was something beautiful that happened.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mayor Dan Davis, for being there for that event. It was great to have your support for that. We had a Prayer for Schools event yesterday, and that constituted a prayer rally at Pearland Junior High South, and then prayer on 68 campuses in Pearland ISD, Alvin ISD, Alvin Community College, as well as a few private schools in the area. So make sure I get the Manvel schools right. We had E.C. Mason Elementary, the new Barbara Bennett Elementary, J.B. Hensler, Manvel Junior High, Manvel High School were all in that list of schools. And so there was prayer on each of those campuses yesterday with a prayer leader to pray first before school got started. And so we're grateful to have the chance to pray over this area and pray for our school system before the school year gets going. And there are 59 different churches or organizations or businesses that helped out with that as well. So Together for Alvin and Modern Acts helped spearhead it, but it took the whole community together to make it happen. And so we are grateful for a great community effort and a good example of the cities in this area working together for good. So thank you very much.
I saw Mayor Gabe Adame of Alvin there, Mayor Kevin Cole of Pearland, Mayor Glenda Hundle of Brookside Village. So it was great to see all the community leaders there as well. And thank you for putting that on. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, I appreciate it. Next, we will go to the inspirational reading, which is assigned to Councilmember Ed Perry tonight. Councilman?
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening, everyone. I thought I would share. I'm working on some character development personally, and so this is one of the areas that I'm focusing on. So I want to share some inspirational words about patience. So just some things I jotted down and borrowed and what have you. Anyway, patience truly is a virtue, yet not many seem to possess it. In a world that strives for instant gratification, not many have developed the important skill of being patient. In this present day and age, people no longer possess the inner calmness to wait, and instead, when they want something, they want it instantly. As a result, people opt for quick fix solutions because they lack the necessary willpower to wait just a little longer for something better. So a couple of I borrowed, first of all, from novelist, would-be philosopher Leo Tolstoy, who says, the two most powerful warriors are patience and time. And then the prophet Isaiah says, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. And so I just close that. As I'm working on my patience, hopefully we all will work on it and develop that character trait. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. If you guys will please stand and join me in saying the pledges. First, to the U.S. flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then to the Texas flag, honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, thank you, everyone. The next item that we have on the agenda is our public hearing tonight. So the way that this works is I will read the public hearing. I'll read it very fast. We will then open it up to the first, second, and third call for anybody wishing to speak on the subject of the public hearing. And you can then raise your hand and I'll call you to the front, and then we will move on with our agenda. So this public hearing is to hear input from the public on an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, finding and determining that public convenience and necessity no longer require the continued existence of a city right-of-way, generally a 40-foot strip running from Iowa Lane on the east to the Topeka and Santa Fe Railroad, called 150-foot strip on the west, consisting of a 0.4503 acre, 19,615 square feet acre tract along the southern border of Redeemer Church Manvel property located at 18218 State Highway 6, Manvel, Texas 77578, and a 0.3829 acre, 16,680 square foot acre tract along the southern border of Melody Hospitality LP property, said property being 6.327 acres, located at the southwest corner of State Highway 6 and Iowa Lane, Manvel, Texas, and a 0.9881 acre, 43,040 square feet acre tract along and through the interior of Somar of Albuquerque LLC property, said property being the remainder of a called 30.244 acre Somar Inn of Las Cruces LLC et al. BCCF number 20060186645, and a 0.4946 acre, 21,547 square foot acre tract through the interior of Milestone South 6 Development LTD property, said property being the remainder of a called 25.5279 acres Milestone South 6 Development LTD BCCF number 03061748, vacating and abandoning and closing said public right-of-way, authorizing the mayor to execute and the city secretary to attest respectively quitclaim deeds conveying respective interest in said abandonment right-of-way to the abutting property owners, providing for severability and containing other provisions relating to the subject. So I will open this public hearing at 6:20 p.m. and I will make the first call for anybody wishing to speak on this subject of the public hearing. I will make a second call and a third call. With nobody speaking on this public hearing, we will close it also at 6:20 p.m. We will now go to public comments. We have 2 public comments that have been submitted. So I will call your name, and then if you can come forward, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to address City Council uninterrupted. The 3 minutes will be displayed on the screens for you to see, and then at the end of 3 minutes, we'll ask you to take your seat and go on to the next person and the rest of the meeting. So the first person that we have signed up to speak tonight is Tim Black. Tim, if you could come forward, state your name and address for the record, and thank you for being here, sir.
I'm Tim Black, 515 Furnace Road, and I'm just here to speak on you had a workshop Friday, and I wanted to say that I thought that was extremely helpful for everyone involved. I think slowing that down and getting people to say is exactly what they're after, and I'm hopeful that we continue that role and keep going. I didn't know there was a budget meeting tonight, so I spared you all that, I suppose. But I'm hopeful that's what I want, is for people to slow down a little bit and kind of figure out what we're spending, how we're spending it, what we're doing, and if you have things like that with input. But I thought that was extremely helpful. And I also think that the other issues that I've brought up, maybe from lack of knowledge, I don't know, but whatever it is, I like the idea that people are concerned enough to want to talk about it and figure it out at some point so that we don't make mistakes financially. Y'all are stewards of our the tax dollars, and I'm at an age where tax dollars are my biggest expense. And it's hard when, I struggle too. Things haven't been perfect for me, especially financially, cash-wise. I'm fortunate that I don't have debt. But with debt comes a lot of stress, strain, and need, to pay. And that's what I want to make sure that the city avoids, or at least tries to figure out what to do with that. I know that we've taken on a lot of debt. I haven't been part of that because I just didn't know. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I am glad that people are taking the time to maybe look at it and talk about it. I think what you did the other day is exactly what everyone needs to, not everything, but table some things just long enough to figure it out and have some input and make things better. I know I've made statements about revenue for this or that. Revenue's not a bad thing. Fines aren't a bad thing, even for dog ordinances or whatever, but it still should be something that we can discuss a little bit, I would hope. Maybe I'm wrong. But those are things that I'm after, and I just wanted to say something positive for the city instead of just up here ranting and raving like I normally do. But things have been challenging, things are hard for me, and tax bills and property tax, that's my biggest bill. So, of course, I have rent houses and stuff, so it's a big deal to me, so I like to kind of look at it, and I'm concerned with the direction we're taking. And I think all of you should. I think y'all are. I think y'all are feeling it already, from best I can tell, some of the financial woes of growing. So take a look at it, figure it out, and hopefully it gets better. But that's what I'm after. And, but I am kind of weird. I'll probably watch for a while and see what happens. Because I am kind of, what I mean? I want to make sure we do it. So that's it. That's all I want. So I didn't get thrown out.
Thank you, Tim. You did a great job in staying within the 3 minutes as well, so I appreciate that. Next, we have Cindy Guire. Cindy, if you could come forward, state your name and address for the record, and then thank you for being here.
Good evening. And I'm here to talk about a very short little thing about the animal ordinances. In my past life, I worked for the city of Houston, and we had a saying that do it once to get it done, do it twice to do it right the second time. Let's do this right. Our community group is working on reviewing the ordinances and compiling the comments, and we would ask for 90 days to get everything together, in which we will keep in contact with the council with regular updates. So that's all we're asking. We are working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. The last public comment that we have submitted here is Miss Abby Sarmiento. Abby, if you can just come forward, and I'm not going to have you state your address, but you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you for being here.
So we are about to do donations for Abby Shoe Foundation because it's back to school, and some kids have already been back to school, but we still are raising money. I would just like to ask if we could do the mile and the 5K. Like I'm going to be raising money for the 5K. I'm going to do these Disney runs, and I'm going to be raising money for my 5K, but I would ask for donations because we are trying to go bigger and better with our people, not just 50 shoes, not just 60 shoes, 70 or 100. So we would like to raise $10,000 for Christmas and for back to school and for maybe out of state. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. And to provide just a little bit of context, Abby's Shoe Foundation, you started this how many years ago, Abby?
I was 6 years old, so 6
old.
years. 6 years.
She started raising money to buy shoes to give back to students entering school that maybe did not have the financial means to get new shoes themselves. And everybody knows in this day and age that shoes are a status symbol. And so it's not just, the cheap ones that you grab off the shelf at Walmart, but it's very nice name brand shoes that you buy for these students to make them feel special and loved. And last year, how many kids did you help last year, Abby?
We helped about 60 kids, I would like to say, in Manvel.
In Manvel, that's awesome. That's awesome. So please keep us posted about information and ways that we can help. We know that your mom will as well. So thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to the city manager update. Manager Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 3 updates for you tonight. The first one is an update on a drainage concern that was brought to the city's attention on Mississippi and Highway 6. We had a very productive meeting last week on the 1st of August with TxDOT and the Drainage District, CNR3, and all parties were present, and the willingness to help was there. And so I just really want to sort of sing and celebrate that We got TxDOT's ear. They had their lead hydrologist on the call with us, which was great. They committed to looking into the issue and trying to see what they can do to help out. And we're going to reconvene with them on October 1st. So anyway, just want to let you know about that. A couple of y'all were on the call, but for those that weren't. And the second one was an update on our debris from Hurricane Beryl. I do want to commend Crowder Gulf and Debris Tech. They've been working on this project since we turned them loose on the 21st of July. And the idea originally was that they would do 2 different passes. And about the time they finished their first pass, or what they thought was their first pass, well, we said, well, what about? And so they have worked for 15 days straight, as it turns out. They're averaging, they're running 6 trucks a day, and they're averaging about 33 loads a day, almost 2,000 cubic yards per day. So if you recall, the estimate that they originally gave us was right at 30,000 cubic yards. I was hopeful that they'd be a little bit under that. As of the end of the day yesterday, they were right at 28,000 cubic yards. So they're probably going to hit our 30,000, which is it is what it is. I mean, they do this for a living, and I guess their estimate was pretty close. But Brooke, I want to commend her and Tammy as well for, we've got a link on the website where folks are obviously using anytime, hey, but what about my address? They haven't picked up here yet, so they've been using that, and each day we're giving Crowder Gulf a report on those addresses. Thank you received, we'll get on it. And so they've been very, very, very responsive. So just want to let you know that.
Dan, just a question on that. Is there going to be a cutoff date for the debris pickup? Because I'm assuming at some point people might just start throwing out.
Exactly. We're going to have to, in fact, I was going to talk to them about that tomorrow since we're hitting that 30,000, because that's what we authorize them for. So anything more than that, is going to start being a financial implication. So we'll talk to them about that tomorrow, and I'll send some information out. Yes, sir. And then the last one, I asked Tammy to give a quick little update on Manvel Market. You kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but just wanted to let her sing some praises for that one too.
So our first Manvel Market was a huge success. Thank you, City Council, for the facilities use policy, which allowed Colleen, who did all the footwork, to come up with the DBA for Manvel Market. It's got our name in it, but it's not it's not us. But she worked hard. The mayor and Colleen, thank you, Brooke, did a video with Mr. Lands as well to advertise for it. Within the first hour, the entities that provided any kind of food items, one was her pickles, one was breads and eggs, and another one was baked goods. So all of them had gotten rid of everything within that first hour. Within about the first hour and a half, one of the booths had 200 little thank you goodie bags. And I got the very last one when she came in to cool off just a little bit. So there were at least 200 people that had driven through and came and shared in the first Manvel Market. The second one right now is she's working on possibly having one on September the 7th. So she'll still go through the same procedure as the first one with filling out the application and everything for the facilities use policy, but it should be even bigger and better.
Awesome. Love to hear that, Tammy. Thank you. Anything else, Manager Dan? Sounds good. So for our consent agenda, we only have one item. I'm assuming nobody wants to remove that from the consent agenda. So do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to accept.
We have a motion from Councilman Bonner. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Councilman Hudson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously 7-0. We have no items that are removed from the consent agenda, so we now have the regular agenda. Item number 1, this is consideration and possible action on a record vote setting the preliminary tax rate for 2024 and scheduling the public hearing on September 16th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at Manvel City Hall, 20031 Highway 6, Manvel, Texas. Manager Dan?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. As we talked about in the workshop tonight, what we need is the preliminary tax rate to be set tonight, and this is the outer limits. This is the maximum that you would be willing to entertain. It cannot be any larger than the voter approval rate, which BCAT has given us as 0.606924. So anything at or below that number, you're okay to do without going to the voters. So that's what we're looking for tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Manager Dan. Do I have any comments or questions from City Council? Okay, so this is going to be a roll call vote. So once we make the motion in a second, we'll go starting with, we started down there during the workshop, so we'll start with Councilman Hudson and we'll work our way down, each voting on it. So what I would like to do is I would like to make a motion setting the preliminary tax rate for 2024 at 56 cents and scheduling the public hearing on September 16th, 2024. Do I have a second? A second. We have a second from Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento. We'll start with Councilman Hudson.
I accept the 56 cent on the, what we're voting on.
Okay, so we have
a tax rate.
Thank you. Okay. We have a yes from Councilman Hudson. Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento?
Yes.
We have a yes from Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento. Councilman Perry?
Yes.
We have a yes from Councilman Perry. I will be a yes. Councilman Opliger?
No.
We have a no from Councilman Opliger. Councilman Lands?
Yes.
We have a yes from Councilman Lands. Councilman Bonner?
Yes.
We have a yes from Councilman Bonner. So the motion passes with a 6-1 vote. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to regular agenda item number 2. This is consideration and possible action to approve and authorize the city manager to execute contract for professional services architect with PGAL for the design of the Manvel City Hall expansion and related site work. Manager Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. So in 2023, there was a certificate of obligation for 3 facilities, the new police station, the Public Works facility, and then an expansion to City Hall. The other 2, the police station and Public Works facilities, of course, are under construction right now, and the expansion to City Hall is the next project. That's the last project of the 3. And so we have once again visited with PGAL. They've already gone through the RFQ procedure years ago, I think whenever it was for this building right here. And so we've done a little bit of preliminary scoping as we've talked about, but now it's time to get the project started in earnest where they would actually come up with the plans and everything. So Jeff is here again tonight, and I think he's got just a short little, I think it's a PowerPoint, right, that he's going to go through with you if you're ready, Mayor. Okay.
And hey, Brooke or Dan, can we get somebody from IT to help with my computer? The screen isn't turning on here. I think I messed something up, so my bad. I'm a millennial. I should know better. Yeah.
You moved it and fixed it.
Yeah, plug is sticking out there, so I've messed it up enough, so I'll let them handle it. Thanks, guys.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Gerber, PGAL. So as we met a few weeks ago discussing the site work that's north of Large Street, we came up with these couple of options that I think the city manager has shared with you to create a playground and a dog park, as well as some additional parking as part of the property that would be surrounding the City Hall expansion, which you see there in the brown color, which is just to the east of this building here. So this option has a little less parking than the second option that I'm going to show you, if I can get it to move. Yep. So here's option 2. The building is still in the same place. It's a 10,000 square foot building, plus or minus. You can see in both of these designs, it is abandoning the Large Street for the whole block and turning that into a parking drive with parking on both sides. This option has a little more parking, and so obviously the park and playground is a little bit smaller in this option. In terms of a schedule, this schedule outlines, if you approve us starting tonight, that we could have the project ready for bid in end of February of 2025, with construction starting in middle of May 25, with construction being completed sometime in March of 2026. So that's this is just a concept plan that we did just to sort of vet the size of the building and the users. This isn't necessarily going to be the final design, but it gives you an idea about, it's a very efficient layout, very similar to this building. It's a sort of a ring corridor strategy that has some internal spaces, but a lot of the spaces around the perimeter. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Manager Dan, anything you'd like to add?
Not just yet. I'll let y'all go ahead and go down the line if you like to.
Sounds good. And before I open up to council, just I guess a clarifier here, and just, Dan, if you can confirm I'm correct here. So in March of 2023, City Council secured funding to do the police station, to do Public Works building, and to do a City Hall expansion. For the City Hall expansion, there was $6 million that was advocated for that decision back then. And so this money is money the city already has. It's not impacting the tax rate because the city already has the money. Now it is just us determining what is the best use of that as it relates specifically to a City Hall expansion project.
Perfectly said. Yes, Mayor. That's exactly right. $6 million. And one of the reasons that we waited for a little bit was to make sure that the police station and the Public Works facility were taken care of, because those were the two facilities that had no improvements over the years. Obviously, we never even had our own police station. So if for some reason we needed to hold back on what this expansion looked like, that's why we kind of sat back to make sure. So again, it's about a 10,000 square foot building. We went through the scoping of what would be actually needed. And, obviously with everything that goes on in this building now, court-wise, eventually, someday it wouldn't surprise me if this winds up being just a courthouse, quite frankly, because it's just so busy, as you can imagine. But anyway, yes, sir, Mayor. So the idea is that the soft costs, the construction costs, everything wouldn't obviously need to be FF&E.
Correct.
Would need to be under that $6 million.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Council, any comments or questions for staff or for Mr. Jeff here?
I have a question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Can we get this PowerPoint so we could see it? I can't see that at all. Not even with my cheater glasses.
I think there's a way, Brooke, that we can log into it and we can see the presentation on our screens here. Can you remind us how to do that?
Okay, thank you for that. And then also, if we could go back to the first slide, I know these are options, right? So that's what we're talking about tonight, is the options, or is it basically just to approve getting into the agreement with PGAL?
Yes, ma'am. These are very conceptual, just to see, does it even make sense? Does it even, will this even fit here? Would this even work? So
Okay.
I'm sure Jeff is a little nervous of even showing these
I
things, because
know.
once you get into the details, right?
All right,
Yeah,
so
some-
I won't go into the details because I can do that. I guess tonight the big picture is getting into that agreement so we can move forward and start the construction phase. My question would be, I'm all about that park in the back. So with construction hypothetically starting by May 2025, right? Was that the date? Projected
Give me
date?
1 second. Yes. Correct.
Okay. Do we know what the phase would be? Because basically what I want to know is how soon can we get the park operating and running, since it seems to me that that's easier to do. Again, I'm not a construction expert, but to get that done faster so that the citizens have access to that. Meanwhile, we're building the facilities here for the city employees.
That absolutely is a possibility. I think what we want to do is, obviously, we need to separate the construction from the public to make sure it's safe for children and public around the construction site.
Okay.
But absolutely, if that's what the city desires, that we can figure out a way to do that.
Great. I would like to see that, because I wouldn't want to, if it's something that can get done faster and more efficiently, why not get something done so that we can reap the benefits of it sooner than later, especially the citizens?
Truthfully, I think we're going to need the parking on the north side of the road anyway. So I think that's probably the whole first phase, because they're going to need every bit of over here. And so, as you can see, there's a big building going in where our main parking lot is right now. So
Casper just logged into my computer and now I can see it.
Oh, good.
Thank
Good.
you.
Good.
And just so you know, the way that this would work is we haven't started design. This is just basically test fitting to make sure
Okay.
the budget works for what the space that you wanted it to include. So as we go through the beginning, what we just called schematic design, that's when we would start to finalize design, and certainly can bring it back to the city or to city council for review and options and further input throughout the design process.
Okay, thank you. I trust that this is going to work within the budget. I just want to make sure that for efficiency's sake, and, somebody's going to call us and say, why didn't they finish the park first? Just sitting there. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other comments or Councilman Lance?
I just want to put something, I know we're hadn't even really started, putting pen to paper or anything, but I promised my lovely wife that I would mention this. I drove her by this weekend and showed her the idea of the play park and the kiddie park and the walk trail, and she did make a very good point. Seems to be a big issue with a lot of moms is the play park. I hope we would consider fencing it to help for the security and safety of the children, running out, across the road or just people around that don't need to be around. But if we would keep that in mind, maybe to try to get the area fenced for the kiddos. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lands. Any other comments or questions from council? Well, Jeff, I have a few here for you. 730 days for the overall project completion seems like a very long timeline. Is there a way that can be can you switch over to the project schedule?
Yes.
It looks like there's not. It looks like these are all dependent upon one another. There's not a lot of carryover between the two. Is there a way that we can streamline this down? Because almost 2 years for all of this just seems like a long time.
So design can happen quicker. The construction probably not, but design can happen quicker. So the key is really how quickly we can all get on the same page about what the design idea is, and then getting all the reviews needed from staff to sign off on them, and then obviously going out to bid and getting a number that works, right? But there is a possibility that this could condense on the design sections for sure. It's just really a matter of how quickly do we get to an approved schematic design that the city's comfortable with and that it works with your budget. From there, it's implementing it. And if we get to there quickly or faster than we say here, then I can pick up some speed in the design side.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'd love to see that sped up, especially because a lot of it is, I know there's going to be a lot of site work that's involved. The construction phase is going to be the bulk of it. But I know that a lot of it is essentially a copy and paste of the existing building that we're in. In the scope of services, the one thing I didn't see, because I understand it's a lump sum, is kind of a cost breakdown. Because I know that you guys within the scopes of service are providing different services within that. For example, you're the architects, but you also have a project management side of costs that are associated with that. Is there a cost breakdown that can be provided to us?
Yes, and I've started to talking to different consultants. So included in that number is a civil engineer, a structural engineer, a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, an engineer for data, a landscape architect. So there's a number of different firms that we would subcontract to do those portions of the project. And certainly as I get those arrangements finalized, I can share that with the city.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because to me, $275,000, just wrapping my head around it, seems like a lot when we're essentially taking this same building, we're putting it over there, and we're adding a park. I know there's going to have to be a lot of work done in regards to drainage, because this was a little bit more plug and play because drainage was already built in. So right now I'm struggling to wrap my head around that. So having that cost breakdown is going to be helpful for me, because I'll have to answer to the community as to how we're spending their tax dollars ultimately. Of course. And so I'd love to be able to have that. The other thing that let me ask this first. You guys designed this current building, is that correct, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. Who managed the construction project for this current building?
When you say manage the construction, you meaning who? So our services included construction administration, which we review the submittals from the contractor. We do site investigations. We recommend pay applications to the city to say they've earned this money for you to do it. And then we do punch lists at the end to determine have they done all the work that is necessary, and as well as answer any questions that they have about the documents through the construction process. And then if there's any changes, then we would issue change orders. So that's what construction administration that is included in our contract. That's not normally called construction management. But if you're asking about from the city side, you're talking about for what we did.
Did you guys, because one of the services you're providing within this agreement is the services to direct, supervise, and coordinate the various items of work within the project design, including review of activities of subcontracted architects or other professionals. Is that something that you guys provided as a service for this current building as well?
Yes, so that's not, I would consider that just managing the design process and all the consultants. And yes, we did that. I did that for this project.
Okay. Because one of the things that I'm thinking about is, I know we've been looking to bring in a construction manager in-house for us. And depending upon what your costs are, it might make more sense for us to have that in-house and to utilize some of these funds. It's not a reflection of your work at all, but to utilize some of these funds instead to hire that in-house to help us with this project. But then we can, moving into the future, incorporate that into our yearly budget and use for the other litany of projects, the 13 capital projects that we have right now. Do you know how much of this 275 is currently allocated for construction admin services?
So again, construction administration, all of those services I mentioned a minute ago, usually allocates to about 20% of the fee for all the consultants. But I think that what normally happens with a lot of other cities when they have a facilities team that engages with us is that's in addition to what we're doing because of the liability of making sure that they're actually doing it right and what happens if they don't do it right and the result of all of that. So most cities opt that they want to have someone that's, available, participating in the project, making sure that this from the city's side that everything is careful, but they're not diving into the weeds of managing our design and making sure that your contractor's building all the products they're delivering meet all of the details of our specifications. That's usually not what a city would engage with. But again, that's just what normally happens.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm hopeful that we learned some lessons from this building to incorporate for next time, as I do know that there was during the construction project some change orders that had to come into play. So hopefully we've got that the T's crossed and I's dotted there. Just a few other items real quick. One is I didn't see anything mentioned in here in regards to the scope of service as it relates to the parkland. I saw West Wing mentioned multiple times, but I didn't see anything about site work for the park or the detention. I might have missed it. I wanted to make sure that was memorialized within this agreement, and I just didn't see it.
Yeah, so it is. What I call that in the agreement is all of the site development, which includes the park and the detention. All of that is normally the site development of site, which we, in my proposal, it says that specifically. In terms of the city's agreement, I don't remember exactly how it describes it. It may not be that specific, but I think you reference our agreement, or our proposal in the agreement.
Yes, your proposal at the end of, under project understanding, the end of the first paragraph, it says the city is planning a new park, playground area, and dog park located around the new parking spaces on the recently purchased properties. So maybe we could just add some verbiage that, and the design for such things are included herein or something like that?
Yeah, I would, if we authorize this tonight, I know we're authorizing you to execute the contract, Dan, so if there's language that can be put in there, that'd be great. As it relates to the park specifically, I would love to see us, if we can, make sure to consult with our Parks and Recreation Board on that, get a recommendation from them before we move forward with anything as it relates to park. We formed this board for that purpose. I want to make sure that we use them, and I'd love to see some inclusive features in the park. We have a Manvel resident, Reagan Velasquez, that started the Yellow Out campaign that has been wanting to realize an inclusive park for kids with disabilities. I'd love to see that. And then I know that in the site plan as well, and I love this aspect, the detention is going to be there regardless. So if we can make it multi-use, such as doing a dog park in there, that would be phenomenal. There were comments made that maybe the dog park would be a dumping ground for animals. Well, this is city property. We can put up cameras, and if people are going to dump in our dog park, we'll catch them on the camera and can start issuing some fines for illegal dumping. So might be, an opportunity to catch some criminals there. But I love the multi-use purpose of that. Instead of it just being a detention facility with no real purpose, we're finding something else for it. I also really liked the call out for the LEED standards. Bobby and I have talked about that in the past, and I love that we're going to be incorporating energy efficiency into what we construct, which is ultimately going to save us money in the long run. So my big thing is seeing a cost breakdown, understanding that that's going to be very important to me, and making sure that we have language for the parks and some of those other items in there is important.
So just for clarity, so the proposal includes designing to LEED standards, but not going through the LEED certification process?
Correct. Yeah.
Right,
I don't
so
think
we're
we have the
designing
LEED cert. That's a
efficiency,
totally, yeah.
Correct.
That'll be a separate process. Hopefully one day we can get to the point of doing that. I know, Bobby, you've researched this and you have experience there. Do you have any comments on that from a LEED perspective?
Well, I think that from a ground-up project, it's pretty easy to at least get the minimum LEED certification just by doing certain things to get points and stuff. It does require some additional administration on the part of the architect to file some paperwork, but you get a nice plaque and it certifies to, that you've done some things to make a public building energy efficient over time, which saves the taxpayers money. So I've always thought it's worth pursuing. I know there is a little bit extra cost for the paperwork, but might be something to talk about more.
Yeah, if we could just understand what that cost is to know.
Absolutely. I've personally worked on over 100 LEED
that's great.
projects. Our company building is a LEED Platinum building, so we absolutely know how to do that.
You're speaking Bobby's love language there, so awesome. Thank you, Jeff. That's all the questions I have, Council. Any comments or questions from you guys? Mayor Pro Tem?
My only one was the same thing I noticed on that project schedule and on some of the wording. It was just labeled as West Wing City. I can't see it.
City Hall, yes, and I can change that to say End Park.
Only because we're learning lessons that things need to be specifically worded and clarified for purposes of money allocation and projects. So if we could do that, and then also just the estimate of that, because as Manager Dan said, we're probably going to need that parking to subsidize the parking while we're in construction on this side. If we could do that, that'd be grateful.
Okay.
I would be grateful.
Help me understand the last part you just said.
So what I would like to see is maybe the construction timeline for that park and separate the two, kind of like you mentioned. I think it would bring clarity to all of us as well, just so we know where we are. Just separate the two projects and be able to designate that. The other question I had, and let me see if I can go back to it, is I noticed that these are projected durations while we do this. So the programming 10 days, I would say we're now getting close to schematic design. That's 35 days, design development is 35, construction documents. Why is that 70 days? Is that us that we're waiting on for 70 days, or is
That's the time it takes. So during the initial, programming, we've done initially what we think you want in the building. But what isn't done yet is we do a lot more definition in each of those spaces. For example, we will take each space and determine, what are the specific requirements of that space in terms of finishes, in terms of technology, in terms of humidity control or lighting, so that our engineers have the information when they're designing that space. They know what's going to be happening in that space and what it's going to be used for. That's what's happening in the first 10 days. Then schematic design is where we take and develop basically ideas like we have here, but develops it further.
I get that.
To get that part. Design development is where we start to add the systems in. So we start to define what is the mechanical systems and what are all the foundation systems, all of that help determine that. And then once we're through that, then construction documents is developing all the bid documents that the contractor uses to bid and to construct the project.
So we don't even get to bid until then, and then we have to go through all that of bidding it out to the contractors.
Correct.
That's a 70-day process, technically.
No, the construction documents is preparing the documents and the specifications, and then we submit those to the city for permit. And then the city will issue a permit, and then we take those documents out and bid them to contractors. In the bid line, that is when we're taking bids from general contractors.
Permit bid. Okay, what I'm referring to mainly is, I guess that the line number 5 where it says construction documents, and it gives it 70 days in the project. So in that 70 days, is that in addition to the 35 for the permit?
Yes.
And the 20 for the bid?
Correct. Those are all linear.
So these are standard practices? It's not like a Manvel thing that we just take longer?
This is, if you look under, how the American Institute of Architects outlines how projects get managed, it's basically these steps.
These are the steps, and these are the projected days.
The number of days depends on the size of the project and the complexity of the project. And again, I think that we can tighten some of this up, assuming we get through schematic design, we have a design that the city's happy with and that we think is going to work with the budget, then we can accelerate those other phases with confidence that we're not going to have to go backwards and fix something because it's over budget or
cut corners or make mistakes okay. Wonderful. I think that's all I have for now on that part of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The only other thing that I'll ask is we can just make sure to have a kind of a milestone checkpoint, a final sign off from council before we actually move forward with any of the designs. I'm going to want to make sure we have that recommendation from Parks and Rec and that we can see what the final design and layout is going to be before we move forward with it. That'd be great.
Yeah, because it would be normal that we would engage with the city's Parks Board to present different ideas, get input from them, and have them part of the process so that when we ultimately present it back to council, they're standing somewhere near me saying, yes, we were involved, and yes, this is what we think is the right project, and that we can together say this is what's being recommended for your project.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, council, would anybody like to make a motion as it relates to this agenda item?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the city manager to approve and join the contract.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Bonner. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilman Perry. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you for being here, Jeff. We now have agenda item number 3, consideration and possible action to approve the second and final reading of ordinance number 2024-0-27. Manager Dan, we'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the animal control ordinance. And so as we talked about last time, we've got some good feedback from the citizenry and are still working on the ordinance. So if with your permission, we would like to continue working on the ordinance. You've approved the first reading. And so the next step is to approve the second and final reading. Normally, a second and final reading goes into your consent agenda, of course, but we've been obviously had a lot of discussion about this particular ordinance. So we're not ready, quite frankly, yet for you to approve the second ordinance. So if we can have a little bit of time, we did do some research earlier, and Bobby, the calendar, or the timeline is 90 days.
From date of approval of the first reading, it has to be approved within 9 days or it's deemed rejected.
Okay, and so the first reading was approved on July 1st. So we've got a little bit, about 60 days or so. I don't think we need that much time, but we want to honor that commitment to get it back to you because there are some significant deficiencies in the existing ordinance from '97, which is really what started this whole initiative, if you will. Does that help, Mayor?
Yeah, no, that's good. I think I'm in support of not taking any action on this tonight, allowing Dan, you, Bobby, Chief, Officer Sherman, the community to continue to collaborate on this, find not only ways to improve the 1997 ordinance, which is still in effect, but find ways to strengthen the ordinance and to improve it, not just fix what's broken. I'd love to have our Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento talk a little bit about the roundtable she had on Friday, keeping it focused on the ordinance, of course, but I know there's been a lot of collaboration and feedback, and I think we've turned a page here where we're working together for the benefit of our Manvel animals, and I love to see that. I want to thank our partners, Houston Humane Society and Lone Star Paws, for working with us to address a pressing need that we have in this community. We also have other partners that we're meeting with, we're talking with, they're helping us out, and it's great to see how people are committed to seeing our animals be taken care of. And I love seeing that, and so it's a work in progress. We're not there yet, but we're committed to making sure if you do it right, you do it light. If you do it wrong, you do it long, and we want to make sure to do this right. So I'd be in support of taking no action on it. But first, I'd like to present it to Mayor Pro Tem, talk a little bit about the roundtable, and then we'll open it up to council comments.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So I'm also in favor of taking no action tonight on this. Specifically because we've heard our community partners who love animals. And I just want to say, I'm inspired by our community. Having the roundtable shows that technically we're all on the same page. We want the same thing. We love our animals. And my specific goal is to bring ways to unify our community around the things that we love rather than divide. The reality is that not everyone is going to get 100% of what they want in anything in life. But I really strive to hear the community and get everyone in the same room as much as we can when it comes to situations like this specifically, because it's huge. It's us. Our animals are part of our community. They are our family. My dogs are my family. And so with that being said, we're going to take no, I'm in favor of not taking any action tonight, as Mayor said. But I will say this, the community was heard, and my eyes were opened because they came and they spoke about the things that I'm not an expert in, but we all have the ability to learn what we don't know, even when we love our animals. So having our Officer Sherman, Animal Control was there, community leaders were there, and we're making a commitment to hear you and to get in front, get ahead of this, so that we can be a responsible city with responsible animal control. Okay? So our community said they wanted us to slow down, and we heard you. However, we're not going to slow down and not take action forever. The idea is to slow down and work on the wording, on those areas, to strengthen and tighten that, to protect our animals, not to hurt them. And we also heard you when you said we look for advisors. We are. We've heard from you. We took note. We're having extensive discussions on that. I welcome anybody that wants to add some more to that. Please feel free to email me. In addition to that, we have some experts in animal legislation that we are getting advice from as well, and we're coupling that together with what works best for our city, and not so much like, some statements that were said copy and paste from other cities. That's not what the intent is. So I just want to thank everybody who offered to help, who came out, took time out of their Friday night, left their families, and showed that they cared. It's not over. We heard you, and we will move forward in a unified way. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have any comments or questions from council? Tim, we can't have questions right now. Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions from council? No? Okay. Well, usually you hear people say that they want government to speed up and go faster, but sometimes it's good to slow things down. So we'll take no action on this, but maybe we can get an update at one of our next two meetings, just kind of where things are at and what progress has been made. I know there's a lot of other things in the works, so when the time's right, if we can get something on the agenda, just for an update, not any action, but an update would be great. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll now, taking no action on agenda item number 3, we will move on to agenda item number 4, consideration and possible action to approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2024-0-30. Dan or Chief?
I'll just start, Mayor. So again, this is similar to what we just mentioned. So this is for the second and final reading of the update to the TIFR. This was the only one of our regulations that had not been updated to 2021 when we did the big update earlier in the year. So the only reason this second and final reading was not in the consent agenda tonight was council had asked us to visit with the partners, sort of other folks in the city that this could potentially impact, and we did. We got some good feedback from, I guess, 3 or 4 different people. Chief, anything specifically you want to talk about? I guess the differences from the first reading?
There's really nothing that really stood out when we reached out to the partners. The only ones that really had any questions is when we reached out to the chamber. He forwarded the information to some of his vendors or partners that he knows in the food industry, and they just wanted some specific clarification on 3 items. I was able to visit with him and clarify that, and they were all good with it, and they seemed happy with the direction it was going.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions from council? Okay. Chief, just to follow up on a few of the items that we had talked about last time. One was about having the food handler license printed. Is that still a requirement, or is it something that can now be shown digitally as well?
It's my understanding that it can be shown digitally. It doesn't have to be in your possession or on your person. I do have Kathy here with us. She can help answer any questions that y'all might have when it comes to that.
Okay, absolutely. Well, Kathy, if you can come forward, I didn't see you back there. if you could just introduce yourself, see if there's anything that you want to add. And I just want to let you know, I've heard from quite a few business owners that have interacted with you over the past few months, and they have said nothing but amazing things about you and also Daniel Franklin and the work that you guys are doing. It's not just about enforcement, but it's about education as well, knowing that people aren't going to be perfect, but working together, you can strive for perfection. So thank you for everything that you do for our community. And is there anything you'd like to share with us tonight about this?
No, sir. I think the chief has covered all the additions. But if you have any questions for me, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Well, two questions that I have. One is, are there scenarios where food or drinks can be handed out without having a food handler license? To give you a scenario, if I had a public event and I made lemonade and I made cookies, could I hand those out without having a food handler license, or are there certain situations where you don't have to have it? Because I know there's been some contention in the past about when you have to have it. The city, we've made sure to try to abide by it and having prepackaged cookies and those sort of things. But can you provide some clarity?
As long as there's not a time and temperature controlled item involved, like you have to have something kept warm or kept cool, and it's prepackaged, it's dated. A Girl Scout stand, for instance, that doesn't require a permit, no.
Okay. Other question that I had was, I know we talked about last time separating out the score based on health and safety items compared to admin items like how bright your light bulb is or if a door doesn't fully close. Is the scoring and breaking things out, is that something that we can control, or is that mandated that we have to do it the way the state tells us we have to do it?
Well, we actually have to do it the way the state tells us to do it. However, we do have a check sheet, and I don't recall on that check sheet and in TIFR itself any of those items being included that you mentioned.
Okay, so there's not the requirement when we do our health and safety inspections regarding having your lights at a certain brightness?
There is a line item. It has to be so many lumens. But I have not seen anywhere in the city of Manvel where we are below that standard.
Well, that's good, and I think your predecessor made sure of that. So that's a good thing to hear. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. So it is an item on the checklist.
No, it's not an item on the checklist, but it is in construction drawings. So when we approve some construction drawings, that's already in there. So when we do a yearly inspection, that is not on our check sheet. There are 47 items, and that is not included in there.
Okay. All right, well, that's good to hear. That's all that I have. Thank you. Council, do you have any comments or questions?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Just because you touched on the handing food out, so would pizza need to be heated? Is that something, or donuts?
Well, donuts.
Do they need to be prepackaged?
Donuts are not a time or temperature controlled item, right? Pizza, if you have pizza and if it's been out for more than 4 hours and the cheese possibly starts building bacteria, that would be something I would want to have an inspection or get a permit before you serve that.
Okay. And so just because I'm remembering a certain church that gave out pizza to the entire congregation every Sunday, and I don't recall if our new ordinance says they have to get a permit every week for that.
I've never heard of anyone getting a permit every week, as long as they have the proper equipment to keep it at that temperature. The hot hold temperature is 135, and most people have some sort of hot hold oven. Even churches that I've been to keep it at that temperature anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So technically, churches could distribute free food to, as long as it's not something like hot chicken or cooked meals that need to be hot, right?
Yes,
Temperature
that's
controlled is the
exactly
word.
right. Temperature controlled, time and temperature controlled.
Time and temperature. And then if my daughter wanted to sell lemonade in front of City Hall.
There's actually a lemonade day throughout the state of Texas, and there are stands all over my previous city, and that's not something we regulate.
So that clarifies that for me. Awesome, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to be clear about something, because I've now kind of heard some conflicting things. So if I'm a church and I do, let's say, maybe a Monday night meal in the message, and I serve food on that Monday night, does everybody that serves food have to have a food handler's permit and go through the certification for that?
So that was not a question I've gotten previously.
Okay.
So you're asking me if they have to have a food handlers, or does their church need to have an inspection?
I'm specifically focused on, to clarify, if they have to have a food handler's permit.
Every person.
So if we have a line of, let's say, all of us council members, all 7 council members showed up to a church and we wanted to distribute food because they had a hot meal, would I have to get a food handler's license in order to distribute that hot meal?
Not if that church already has a food handler's permit. That's the difference. So you're saying a food handler's license. So every entity that serves food has one person that has a food handler's permit, right? So once you have that permit and it's been inspected, then not everyone in that church has to have a food handler's license.
Okay, so in this situation, let's say I was a church and I gave out food to my congregation, warm food to my congregation, I would have to go through the process of securing a food handler's permit in order to distribute that food?
So would that church have a kitchen?
Does it matter if they have a kitchen?
It does. If they have a kitchen, then they are able to warm up food. How else would they warm up food? Does it come warm? Are you going to keep it warm?
Let's go through this scenario. Let's say that they have a kitchen, but irregardless of them keeping it warm or not, do they need to get a permit?
If a entity in the city of Manvel has a kitchen and they serve food, not just to themselves, but to the public, then they should have an annual inspection. And in that inspection, they will have one person that has a food handler's license, and that would cover them for the year. So if on a Monday night they wanted to hand out food, then they would not need anything special or specific, other than that one license.
Gotcha. And so one clarifying question, I know the chief wants to add something. Let's say I wanted to buy food that served 500 community members, and I wanted to set up, and this is a hypothetical scenario, set up in Manvel High School parking lot, and I wanted to, with my family, serve that warm food to the community, to anybody in the community that needs food. Would I have to have a food handler's permit in order to do that? I know we're kind of putting you on the spot here. These are
You are
scenarios
putting
that
me
I've
on
been
the
asked.
spot because TFER says, yes, if you're going to hand out time and temperature controlled food, you have to have a permit. That's what the state says. So if it's not time and temperature controlled and you're just handing out prepackaged food, then no, I don't see an issue with that. But if it's anything time and temperature controlled, like I would not, there have been places that have cheese and it's on their cold hold table, but it's below or it's above 41 degrees. It's been at 57 degrees for 4 hours. I would not want them to hand that out to anyone. So.
Okay, thank you. Chief?
I just wanted to clarify, I think we're talking in 2 different languages right now. We're talking permits and we're talking food handlers and so on and so forth. What she's trying to explain is if you have a time or temperature controlled food, you have to have a food handler's certification or food handler's license on duty at the time that the food is being distributed. Doesn't have to be everybody, just one person that is now a food manager, basically has gone through the training. If it's not temperature controlled or time controlled, TCS is what they call it, then it's prepackaged food. It's something that doesn't require that, then no, you do not have to have that. As far as the permits goes, it depends on what you're doing, where you're doing, because we have different exemptions for nonprofits, schools, and churches. So if you're doing something that is not at the church or outside, but you're doing it for the church, you'd probably necessitate a permit. But you'd have to look at what are you serving. If it's temperature controlled, something that needs to be requiring a food handler, then you're going to need to have a food handler that is on site.
Okay, so if it was.
Not everybody, just one person.
Just one person, but if it was like cookies that you're handing out, that's not time and
No.
temperature controlled. You don't need permit,
Correct.
license, whatever, any of it.
It's best practice to have it sealed in a container or some type of packaging if you're handing it out to public, but I don't think there's any requirement that says you have to do that. What we're really concerned about is the temperature control for safety food. That's what we're really concerned about. That's what gets people sick.
Of course, absolutely. That helps clarify it, because in the past, I've heard different things and kind of trying to make sense of what you were sharing tonight. Helps equip me with the information to be able to, of course, point them to the experts, but also be able to get a little bit of an understanding as well. So this is an education for me, and I appreciate you answering my questions. I know I put you on the spot in some,
Oh,
I
no,
could tell they
yes,
were
sir.
some interesting scenarios.
No,
but
it's my pleasure.
it was
Thank you
very-
for
it was
asking the questions.
It was helpful for me. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have
Anyone
a
else?
question or comment?
It was basically along those lines, because previously, we know of a situation of a small business that was penalized because one of the employees didn't have their food handler's license printed.
Oh.
And they had it digitally, but they got docked for that. And so the administrative part was lumped in with the food and safety part. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're beyond that today and that we're all good, and that if somebody wants to hire someone and they're going to hand you something cold, that you're not going to get penalized because you don't have your food handler's license printed and
No.
pasted.
Actually, the school district, AISD, all of their food handler certifications came to me digitally. And I just downloaded it and put it in their files, made sure everything, of course, was properly dated, but yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for answering our questions. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, it's my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Anyone
Councilman
else?
Lands?
I have a very similar scenario with a little bit of a twist. So, every other month, I take breakfast to our wonderful city crew, city workers, and I'm taking them out again this Wednesday morning. I go to Mr. Donut. I get me a box, a dozen breakfast tacos, maybe some kolaches or whatever. They're in a box, they're in a bag. I go straight from Mr. Donut, I go straight to the barn, put them on the table, the guys come and eat them. Probably 10 minutes. Do I have to have a food handler's license?
We are at 225 Highway 6.
You're fine.
I'm just kidding you. No, there is no issue with that. No issue.
There's a reason behind that. I have a very near and dear
That falls
reason
under the same
for
category as Uber Eats.
My love for the city employees and the city workers, it goes way, way back for 30 years. So,
That's wonderful.
but anyhow, am I okay with
Yes,
picking?
sir, you are okay.
All right. I don't want you to handcuff me or anything.
And what would his reasoning be for being okay? Is it because it's made by somebody that has all the proper documentation and he is just simply delivering it? I think, Chief, you mentioned kind of like the concept of
That's exactly
David's
what it
glorified
is.
Uber Eats for Public Works.
Yeah, that's also in TIFR,
Okay.
that Uber Eats, so, yeah.
Yeah, there's a section in the TIFA that covers the transportation of food from one place to another.
Yeah,
Good to know. Thank you.
They put that in there because of the Uber Eats and all the places now that will call somebody to bring your food to you.
Good deal. Good questions, Councilman. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Council? Anything else that you would like to add, or?
no, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for answering the questions and for all the work that you're doing. We appreciate
My
it.
pleasure, thank you.
Council, do we have a motion regarding agenda item number 4?
Make a motion to approve agenda item number 4.
We have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento and a second from Councilman Oplager. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Agenda item number 4, this is consideration and possible action to approve the first of 2 readings of ordinance 2024-0-24. I think we get to turn this one over. Drum roll, please. to our Director of Development Services, Mr. Joes, correct? Or are you taking this one?
Let me just preface it because Joe's hadn't had the pleasure of addressing council just yet. So the ADUs, of course, this was something that came from council. That's something that you'd like to see right now in the existing ordinance. We have a provision for guest quarters, and that's about it. So PD&Z has been working very diligently over the last couple of months. We've actually had 2 public hearings. One of them you were involved in. It was a joint public hearing to try and come up with an ordinance that would allow for accessory dwelling units. And so we've got some of the guys from Safe Built here tonight. Joes, I don't know if you want to couch anything or just turn it right over to them. Okay, perfect.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jordan Cruz, Safe Built BBG. I'll be presenting accessory dwelling units for you today. I'm going to start with the current ordinance as it exists, and then we'll move to the changes proposed. So currently, guest quarters is defined meaning an attached or detached building or secondary living area of residential use that provides living quarters for guests of occupants of the principal residence and 1, contains no kitchen or cooking facility, 2, is clearly subordinate and incidental to the principal residence on the same building site, and 3, is not rented or leased, whether compensation be direct or indirect. Some of the changes that we made, proposed, are A, accessory dwelling unit limited to the family of the principal structure, B, amended to the family definition to allow an ADU, C, the deletion of the guest quarters definition I just read. D, an addition for detached accessory dwelling unit. E, a definition for the attached accessory dwelling unit. F, a definition for garage apartment. G, a definition for guest. And H, a definition for kitchenette. The definitions are as followed. For the accessory dwelling unit means a secondary dwelling unit established in conjunction with, but clearly subordinate to, a single-family dwelling that is the principal structure on the lot. An accessory dwelling unit shall be utilized for the family that resides in the principal structure. The ADU may be attached to the principal structure, or it may be a separate accessory structure or portion thereof on the same lot. An ADU may also be erected over an addition to a normally permitted accessory structure. An accessory dwelling unit may include a kitchenette or cooking facility that do not include a full-size stove, which we defined as 30 inches in width or larger. For the purpose of this definition, mobile homes, manufactured homes, and recreational vehicles shall not be constructed as ADUs. This is something we talked about. Family means 2 or more persons related by blood within 2 degrees of consanguinity. Marriage within 2 degrees of affinity. Adoption or guardianship living together as a single housekeeping unit with a single kitchen facility. The term single kitchen facility shall not exclude 1 outdoor kitchen facility and 1 accessory dwelling unit with a kitchenette per single housekeeping unit with 1 kitchen.
So, hey, Jordan, you have a very smooth voice. I would love to listen to you on an audiobook. I don't want you to have to read through every single definition, though. I'll save you from that reading, save the voice there. If you could give us the kind of just a high level for each slide and kind of just the bullet points of what we're looking at here, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, so the changes are the ones that we've discussed. We defined them all very clearly based on the feedback that we got from the planning and zoning. And they seem to agree with us on many of these. Same thing with section 7730. We added the necessary requirements, the 650 square feet space limitations, the 1 ADU allowed per residence, the setbacks requirements, utilities, they cannot have a separate meter, things like that. Some of the examples that we wanted to show you, the one on the left here, you'll see that's a detached that's separate. On the right, you'll also see one that would be above your standard garage. one ADU is permitted. Here's kind of a graph that staff made to kind of show you another example of the above the garage detached and the attached ADUs. The drainage, all accessory dwelling units shall satisfy the minimum requirement for flood damage prevention and all requirements from the Manvel Engineering Design Criteria Manual. Planning, Development, and Zoning recommended approval on July 22nd, the 2024 meeting, regular meeting, and staff does recommend approval on this ADU ordinance.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. Joe, is there anything you'd like to add from Development Services?
I would just like to mention that this allowance is something that we've discussed in the past. I clearly remember that we had the definition for guest quarter, but there would be instances where we would have a roadblock where the intent is to have either a family member who would like to kind of be on that property, but have some freedom as well. And it's a discussion that's happening all over the country, I would say. We have home builders who've started coming up with plans that allow for attached ADUs. They've also have started reconfiguring the home layout so that separate accesses could be factored in and things of that sort. So I would say that this is a positive thing. It would add value to our community. It would give options for family members to take care of their seniors or allow for situations where kids would love to continue staying with parents and a lot of other configurations. So I think it's a positive step and we would recommend approval.
Awesome. Thank you, Joes. Well, one of the things that I like here is having the definition of family, and I think that was a very fine-tuned definition. PD&Z did a great job working on this, had a lot of discussion. So I like that definition of family, and we got some information from the Valencia development by Hillwood. The average home that's being sold there is about $530,000. That's very expensive. Homes are becoming unattainable in Manvel because that's what the market is dictating. And we want to make sure that the ability for any resident that wants to live in Manvel can come and can purchase a home. And I know for one, my father-in-law is 70 plus years old. Being able to have an ADU that he could live in on our property would be a tremendous blessing to not just my wife and I, but to our kids. And it creates housing attainability in Manvel. Two comments that I had and then a question was in regards to the full range stove not being able to exceed 30 inches. I know the average size is 30 inches for a stove, but if I want to get a stove that's 32 inches or 34 inches, I don't know if we want to put that restriction on it. If somebody has a little bit of money and they love to cook, they're a chef and they love to cook, I don't know if we want to limit their size. So that might be something I'd be interested in changing. The other would be for people that live on acreage, the SFR still limiting their ADUs to 650 square feet. It's very, very small. That's about the size of, that's actually bigger than my first apartment. And so I can picture how small that is and how tough that would be if you had a husband and wife that wanted to have it like a grandkid stay in the ADU with them. It would just be very tight. So from a acreage standpoint, I don't know if we want to necessarily put the limit of 650. I think that's something, council, that we can discuss. The question that I have, and I think Councilman Bonner, this was an item for you, and I'll let you speak to this as well, is in regards to limiting them being rentals. I know that people are already doing it. They're already renting them out right now. Just the good law-abiding citizens aren't doing these. But Councilman Bonner, can you speak to some of your concerns about that, and then maybe we can get the chief to weigh in there?
Well, my concern is I don't think that we don't have the manpower to enforce the current ordinance in that regard to rentals that are happening. And now we're going to add more to this. And this really isn't for you. It's just, how are we going to manage it? It's not a police issue. The only way that you're going to find out about the rentals is if one moves into me and I see somebody going back and forth that I know is not the homeowner, I'm going to rat them out. And the next thing you know, then code enforcement's got to come prove it. How's that going to happen? You can't just barge into their house. So I just worry that we're going to turn into a VRBO capital at some point. It's already happening. I just know that it is. And no, we can't answer questions, I'm sorry. But we can't. So that's what I worry about, is the rental aspect. I understand, and I've talked to some people that they see that they want to rent. They don't see it any difference as wanting to rent their house out, which, depending on your HOA rules, you can do that. I didn't move into my subdivision wanting it to be a rental subdivision. I wanted it to be single-family house owners. And I just worry that this ordinance is taking us down a path that's going to lead to more rental, and rental never seems to be taken as good a care of as somebody owning their own home and living there. And I just worry that neighborhoods are going to go downhill.
Thank you, Councilman. I want to see if staff has any. I think, Joe's, you're unmuted. You might have that. I think Councilman Opliger then has a comment, and then we'll turn it over to you, Mayor Pro Tem.
So I agree in terms of identifying which units are being rented. It's not easy, but having the provision that accessory dwelling units cannot be rented out, number one, it makes our position clear that what the purpose of this allowance is. And number two, as and when we are able to catch up on identifying violations, we are able to rectify it. Without this provision, we won't be able to do it. Number one. Number two, I guess you're also asking whether this would result in a lot of renting happening versus owners living in there and having family members or family members occupying the accessory dwelling units. That is something that we'll have to watch, and we'll have to come up with mechanisms and enforcement methods to identify where violations are happening. And it's a struggle that every community has. And I think at some point we'll have to see whether the benefit and the flexibility that families would have from this provision outweighs the challenge we have in terms of identifying. And there are consultants who assist communities in identifying, and if it gets to that point, we can look into that option where there are algorithms and there are using technology, we're able to scan through all these listings and advertisements to figure out which properties, which addresses are being advertised for renting, and we can catch up from that as well.
I just wonder that, is there any of the research out there, and it may not even apply, but we see so much today in the media about people that have squatters that live in a house and you can't get rid of them. Like, people think if I own this house and I come back and somebody's squatted in it, I can just kick them out. Well, that's not happening. They've got rights all of a sudden. So is this going to lead to making it easier for somebody renting it out? Or are you not going to be able to enforce the ordinance to get rid of it?
I would like to be optimistic, number one. And previously I worked for a community which did allow for accessory dwelling units. And I would like to say that that community didn't have a huge problem. But I would say that the allowance over there was slightly different. There were some restrictions in terms of certain subdivisions, like subdivision that has already existed, could not have a new one. They had to write it into their restrictive covenants and things of that sort. But every house that had a building which was accessory to the primary could be converted to an accessory dwelling unit. And that community also had similar fears, but as far as I'm aware of, we didn't have a rampant issue of properties being rented out and property values deteriorating and all of that. So I would like to be optimistic and see how it goes.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Opliger?
Let me make sure I understand what I just heard. Are we saying that I can't rent my property out if I decide to move?
No, sir. The accessory dwelling unit is what we're talking about.
No, I'm talking about renting my property. That's is that what you were asking, renting the whole property? My house, if I'm going to move for a while, I can't rent my property.
You can rent your property.
Right, okay. Wow. That's
Unless
yeah,
your HOA says you can't.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about I can't rent my property if I'm not living there.
No, the idea was that the ADU could not be a
Right,
rental.
yeah, no, but see, okay, and what I thought I heard previously, that's complaint driven, right? 'Cause I'll give you a very living scenario, right? We took care of Pop for 4.5 years. Pop just passed. We're moving on from that property, right? I mean, when you have especially the parent and stuff like that, things change, right? So I don't know, I wouldn't, but I could see, I would sell the whole thing, but I don't see that. It's going to be complaint driven. If there's somebody builds that and then their parents move on and they start seeing renters, the traffic would itself drive it, and that's a complaint, right? So that's, okay, I just want to be clear about the whole property.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, so the same concern that I had is not with renting our personal property. If I want to buy homes and I want to be a property manager and rent that out, absolutely, we don't have a problem with that. Well, just for clarity, it's those attached small houses that people want to have their elderly parents live in, those accessory dwelling units. And the concern that we have, because I have friends and we hear it on the news a lot, is the Airbnb, right? Those are where people use their accessory dwelling units, their small casitas, their pool house, for instance, and they rent it out like a hotel. And that drives crime, and that's what we are trying to avoid. Now, I live in Lakeland. We have garage apartments, right? We bought it, built it out, spent a wealth of money on the front end so that we could house either one of our elderly parents one day or my child who is in college, who never used it, by the way. But through COVID, it became our office. There's no kitchen up there, but we know of many people who live in Lakeland that have built full kitchens or kitchenettes, and they rent it out as a home to someone else, and they make money off of that, and they live there. And as long as, I feel like as long as they're not renting it out on a short-term rental, which is Airbnb, where we have it like them hotels, right? We don't want that. But I think that the fear is, like one of the residents spoke during public comments at our last session or last council meeting, that there's a problem because they have neighbors who built an accessory dwelling unit, and then you have people who squat. So there is going to be some risk here. I get that. There's going to be risk. The risk versus reward. I strongly believe in caring for our elderly and for our family members, being Mexican Americans. What we do, we love our family, we bring them in, and please, if we can have some space, the better, right? However, the question still remains, how do we plan to enforce this, especially, and not that we want government overreach, because trust me, as a patriot, we don't want that. However, we have to realize that once we go down this rabbit hole and we open this door, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? So I want to be optimistic as well. I want to trust our citizens. I want to trust the people that move to Manvel, that, it's the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the criminals do 80% of the crimes. What is our plan? I know that it's going to be complaint driven. I know that we can maybe use some technology to scan for Airbnb, scan for short-term rentals, Facebook Marketplace, all those type of things. But how do we keep it from getting out of hand? And then we become, specifically, since we know that the housing market is becoming unattainable. People are going to be forced out of their homes. The mortgages are expensive. Prices are tripling. I mean, it's crazy what's happening in the economy today. So it leads the understanding that eventually a huge population is going to be looking for small short-term rentals. So that's the fear, right? Not that we don't want to have our loved ones in a casita or detached or an above apartment garage like mine or an attached dwelling. The other concern for you, Mayor, when you said the 650 square feet, I think that what if, or do we already have plans in place for if someone has 5 acres, you know, they have a nice sized home and they want to build one of these now, if it's above 600 square feet, is there a way to say, hey, you can come and request a variance? That way we kind of know what's going on, rather than limiting it to a specific 600 square feet and that's it, right? Or is it, let me see, 650 square feet of conditioned space or 20% of the square footage? Okay, well, that makes more sense, right? And do we know why we landed on the 650?
That was a recommendation from Planning and Zoning.
From
Planning and Zoning.
Okay, so from PD&Z, they came up with 650?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I see.
There's a basis for that.
Yeah, so we actually have a developer that builds these. I think it's Tilson Homes. And their model, the one they build the most, is a 650 square foot attached garage ADU kind of template. So we wanted to make sure, normally like most cities do 600 square feet, but we didn't want to create a problem where we weren't looking in the future, didn't check our plans. So 650 was a square footage we knew that Tilson could live with and worked with most of the homes already in existence.
Okay, so it's becoming a standard,
Yeah.
basically.
But 600 is a very common square footage for ADUs.
Okay, so it's either 650 or 20% of the square footage. I think that's livable.
And that makes sense because you have a giant house and it's an expectation on a large lot that maybe you have a slightly bigger ADU unit based on that larger property. So that was just a trade-off because the smaller lots, it's more impactful if you have a building on there, and that's a 650 number that works. And if it's a larger lot, it's less impactful.
Okay. And then I think the height, the zoning, the kitchenette thing, I think that, you know, if it's a dwelling unit, if it's a small one and grandpa wants to have the best wolf, you know, chef kitchen and cook for the kids, or a nanny's quarters or something like that, I think they should have that. I mean, you might as well, right? What's the difference between having a one stove or a four, you know?
This is just kind of what we worked through with the Planning and Zoning Commission. But again, it seems like at least two people on this council are okay with not having a limited size stove. So that could be an amendment to this proposed ordinance.
Okay.
So you guys can propose adoption with the amendment to allow a full-size stove with.
So my concern also, to weigh that, is that if we did do a full-size kitchen, then it does make it more enticing to our citizen who spoke last week. She said, well, they built this house for their elderly, I believe it was a mother. When they then pass on and move, then what do you do with that extra space? Which then entices that homeowner to go and short-term rent it out or long-term rent it out. So we can't control everything, right? But we want to mitigate.
And sometimes it really comes down to the exact moment in time when you have this need for an ADU. One case in another city was an elderly mother who was moving in, but she owned a restaurant and her whole thing was cooking. And so she actually made gourmet meals for the family. And it's just all these cases are just so tough, and there's so many. You throw darts, and we're just doing our best to encapsulate the best we can do, and just do the best. And again, there's always a variance process. There's always processes that can go through. We're just trying to do our best to have the best product that we can see the future with.
Well, I like it. I was for it from the get-go. I am obviously a little afraid about how we're going to control it, but again, we can't control everything. I just want to do it responsibly and do the best we can, and hopefully trust our citizens to do the right thing. I mean, this is really what we're doing. Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
And if I may add just one, Mayor, sorry.
Yes.
Just one more thing. So all the risks that we talk about, those risks exist even without this ordinance. In spite of the ordinance, all of those risks exist. We just have to depend on complaints. We have our excellent code enforcement team who are out there. We have other team members who are out there. Together, we just have to do a good job at catching these situations, I guess. So, yeah, that's what my point is. Even without this ordinance, we have all those risks.
Already there is what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jose.
Thanks.
Councilman Lands?
I'm not quite sure if we've touched on this in the past or not, but just an idea about maybe some form of registration. Don't want to use the word permit, we stay away from that word. But if nothing else, I mean, how are we going to get in front of this family and, you know, the degrees of separation and all that? That needs to be put in front of the people that do want to have an ADU, at least to me. So, and if we did require at least a registration with the city, if nothing else, it gives us some kind of form of, I don't want to use the word control, but if we just put this out there like that, we're basically saying, do what you want to do. Here's the guideline we want you to follow, but it really doesn't give us any strong recourse. So, I don't know, if we had some kind of just a registration form.
Permits.
I don't want to use the
think,
word permit.
Joe's, is there, with anybody that's going to construct something like this, they have to go through a permitting process anyways?
Absolutely.
But if they're like your house, I mean, it's already built, so.
I'd have to run gas and get all the connections and get everything up there as well.
Build it out still.
I'd have to build it out still.
Yeah, I mean, we know people that's already renting them out, and I think we need to try to figure out a way to backtrack a little bit. And if it's just an idea, I think we should have some kind of control that we could say, okay, hey, you didn't register, come on down and register, and when they register, we'll find out who's in that home. Is it your grandmother or your niece or whatever else? A little more hands-on as far as I'm concerned.
Joe's, go ahead. You're unmuted. Do you have anything to add?
I'm thinking. Registration and tracking sounds like a good idea, but again, it involves, I don't know if I'm not 100% sure if I'm ready to say, yeah, that would be a good idea to work on it, because even for that, we are depending on individuals to show up and say, hey, I register. So if they don't choose to register, then we are not going to get the tracking that we intend to by the registration process. Then again, it'll feel like we are lagging behind. So
That's true, but it does give us recourse.
right, that's true too. So I'm not 100% sure if I can say right now that adding a registration process to this would help us to in a great extent, but I can definitely look into it and kind of see how productive it has been in any other situation. Some other communities, if they may have had that process put in place.
If you like, Mayor, that could be something, this is just the first of 2 readings, as an example. That's something that we could look into before we come back with the second reading.
I think, sorry to say this, but the more things that we require registration for, it goes back into the control. So I definitely want to say that. However, if we want people to register their pets so that we can help them for things, then we encourage that. When it comes to accessory dwelling units, how about we create some type of benefit that encourages people, if they want to register their elderly family member or whoever's in there, if it's a minor that's in college or something like that. I think that it should be encouraged, but definitely not mandated. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Maybe that's something, team, that we can circle back with at the next meeting if this does pass tonight. I think, Joe, as you covered what I said, the risks that we've talked about exist today. People are already doing this illegally. A resident spoke at the public hearing and alluded to that. What we have is I've had many people that have reached out to me asking for this, saying, why is government restricting my ability to allow my parent to live on my property? Because that's what we're doing right now. For people that want to abide and follow the law, they are being punished while the criminals can just get away with it. And so it absolutely will be complaint driven. In the future, I think regardless, we would need to look at it maybe an STR ordinance similar to what the city of Pearland has, because you can still rent out your home if you want to rent out your home. That there's nothing that is currently restricting you from that. I look at this and say, I want Manvel to be known as a city that encourages multi-generational living. That we understand the burdens that you have as a family, or if you have a child with special needs, or you have an elderly parent, or you have somebody that's sick, that you want them close and take care of them. I don't want to be known as a city that shuts you out from living in our community or staying in our community because you can't do that. The last thing I would want is somebody to have to move because their parent gets sick or their parent gets up there in years and they want to keep them close, but Manvel said, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. I think we have an opportunity here to do something different than what the cities around us have. And as we've talked about, there's always room for improvement within these documents. One thing I do want to mention is that back in the 2000s, I think Councilman Oplager, you were involved with this. The city of Manvel and former Councilman Acree, the city voted in zoning. And one of the things that the city of Manvel has said then and has said since then is we do not want to see multifamily living in the city of Manvel, preferably not to see multifamily apartments or anything like the such. And that's the reason why we are constructing the ordinance this way, to give it teeth to protect the integrity of what the voters have wanted. Now, in the future, the voters might say that they want to see apartments, that they want to see multifamily, and that's the voters' choice to see that. But they have not said that at this point in time. I kind of came to terms with the 650. I'd be fine with keeping the 650 there. But for me, before we ultimately vote on this, I will make amendment to remove the restriction of the 30 inches for the full range stove, because I don't agree with that being in there, but I can understand the logic behind it. Councilman Perry or Councilman Hudson, do you guys have anything that you'd like to add to this right now?
I think y'all touched.
We've covered it all.
And the 30-inch stove, that's your regular size?
That's your regular size, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Councilman Bonner?
Did they make the one change, at one time, planning and zoning was talking about no gas could go in the ADUs, just electric? Is that still the same way?
No, it just has to be on the same meter as everything else.
But you can have either gas stove or electric stove now?
Correct.
The way the ordinance.
All right, thank you, Councilman. So, Council, what I'll do is I'll make, where's my agenda here? I will make a motion to amend Ordinance 2024-0-24 to remove the language that says not to include a full-range stove that exceeds 30 inches. Do I have a second for that amendment?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Councilman Oplager. All those in favor with that amendment? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously 7-0. So now we have the item on us as amended. Any final comments or questions? Okay, do I have a motion for this agenda item?
I'll make a motion for the agenda item.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento as amended. Do we have a second? We have a second from Councilman Oplager. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously 7-0. Thank you, everyone, for that. That was a good discussion. If we can just, Dan and Joe's, make sure that this is on our regular agenda next time. I want to make sure that we get an update for Councilman Lands regarding the registration piece. That way we can circle back to that. So thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jordan. You did a great job, so I appreciate you. Okay, we have the executive session on here. I don't know if we will need it, Council. So I will move to regular agenda item number 6. We'll have Dan and the team introduce that item, and then if it's deemed necessary, we will step into the executive session. Does that work, Dan? Okay. So agenda item number 6 is consideration and possible action to approve the first of 2 readings of ordinance number 2024-0-28.
So, Mayor, this was what the public hearing that we had earlier was about. We did not have any input from the public on this potential right-of-way abandonment. So we have a process that we go through, as you know, to abandon right-of-way. This particular right-of-way is owned by, I guess, 4 different property owners. The one that's sort of spearheading the project is the Redeemer Church, and it's a 40-foot right-of-way that is not on our thoroughfare plan or anything like that. So the request is to abandon that right-of-way. As part of our process, we do the public hearing, but we also reach out to the local utility companies such as CenterPoint and AT&T, all those. I think even the railroad, if necessary. And sure enough, was it today that we heard back from CenterPoint?
Last week.
Or late last week, we heard back from CenterPoint that they may want to retain an easement within this right-of-way. So, so that I don't butcher this, I guess Tammy or Bobby, y'all jump in here, but I think we're actually asking for them to table this tonight until we see does the church still want to abandon this right-of-way, knowing that it's going to have an encumbrance? Does that still help them? It may, because an easement is, you can still get closer as far as building and whatnot. It could still help them in their future building envelope more so than a right-of-way. But we don't have an answer from them just yet, right, on if they want to pursue.
So when I talked to Joe with the church today, he said he'd like to wait and see what CenterPoint sends in. He feels like that right-of-way that they're talking about is just going through the Milestone property, not the whole right-of-way along the entire thing. So when we get the map and see exactly where it is, then they'll discuss it.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. And one thing I wanted to just add for council's context, the church, whenever they expanded back quite a few years ago, because this right-of-way was on their property, they escrowed funds with the city. Over a few years, they paid funds to the city because it was a requirement according to our code, which as a nonprofit, that was a lot of money to them. So if we abandon this right-of-way, depending on what happens with the easement, that would release those escrow funds back to the church to be able to utilize for whatever they deem appropriate, but there also is a stipulation piece within that as well, correct?
Minus the fair market value of the property.
Right.
Minus the fair market value of the property, obviously, we have to get an appraisal, and every property owner will pay, whatever council deems as fair market value based on the appraisal for that right-of-way release.
Okay. So we would have to determine what that value would be.
Well, and the first step is does council have any interest in abandoning this right-of-way? Because if you don't, then this whole thing ends right here. If you're okay with the concept of it, okay, then at what cost? Because it's technically, I don't want to say owned by the city, but it's public right-of-way, so there's some value to it. The escrow amount, I had asked Tammy to look it up. It looks like they paid, Redeemer Church paid $117,600 last April. So there's money in the escrow right now that, could it be applied? Is the right-of-way worth that much or more or less? That would be something that we'd have to work out.
Okay. Well, I guess this is an opportunity, council. Do you have interest in pursuing this further and taking a look at the next council meeting? If so, we'll table it. Or if you want to continue looking at it, we'll table it. But if you have no interest in abandoning the right-of-way, then we'll just shoot this down now. What are your thoughts?
Why would we want to keep on to this strip? Like, what benefit does it have to the city? Are we collecting tax dollars on it? Is it hurting anybody?
No, the opposite. In fact, this is one of those.
Should we get a tax donation receipt that we're donating the property back to them?
No, like Bobby just alluded to. So if it's a right-of-way, then we aren't receiving any tax
Okay.
at all. So turning it into real property would actually put it back on the tax roll.
Okay.
We have no plans to. This is another one of those triangular shapes of property.
So it's a piece of land that technically we can't really do much with. It's a right-of-way. And so the logic is, if we abandon it, we're basically donating it, right? No?
We can't donate it. That's where Bobby will jump in. So there's a value to it.
There is
and
a value.
That's why the executive session is on here. So typically we would go back and we would talk about what is the value, just like any other piece of property that you wanted to sell.
I don't have a problem abandoning it. I'm just going to say that. I think that it's the right thing to do for the church.
Okay. Well, it seems like there's interest in furthering this conversation at the next council meeting. So, council, I'll make a motion to table agenda item number 6. Do we have a second from Councilman Bonner? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion to table passes unanimously, 7-0. I think that wraps it up. So we now have mayor and council comments. Any comments from council? Well, I would just like to echo again the comments regarding the Manvel Market. Thank you to Colleen and the team. Tammy, who was here and working, and not just working the day of, but working tremendously leading up to it. Council, thank you for your support of this great community event, and to everybody that showed up, and the vendors. I believe they've already had like 15 new vendors that have signed up and want to participate next time on top of who was already there, which is phenomenal. School starts not this week, but next week. So be praying for all of the students, teachers, administrators. For those of you that have school-aged kids, whether you're homeschool, private school, public school, I wish them the best on the school year. Football season starts soon, and volleyball season. Hoka hey. I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Sarmiento for joining me. We welcomed the first home buyers and residents of Valencia last Friday. Welcomed them to their homes and to our community, and they were very appreciative and very excited to be in Manvel. And Council, one of the things that we'll tackle in the month of October, just to let you know, is in regards to performance reviews for our 2 direct reports. As soon as the budget passes, we'll want to tackle their performance reviews. That way we can set them goals for the next fiscal year instead of waiting until February and March to do the performance reviews and set those goals. So just be thinking about that over the next 2 months. Anything else, Council, or are you guys calling it a night? We've got a motion to adjourn from Councilman Bonner. Do I have a second? We have a second from Councilman Perry. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes.